Shinfengyu is the beloved and pampered only daughter of a wealthy business family and just turned 25 years old. She had just returned from a wonderful world tour, her luggage full of souvenirs and her mind full of beautiful memories. Life is perfect, bright, and comfortable. She was walking down the street, ready to get into her family's car, when suddenly, the ground seemed to tilt violently beneath her feet. She stumbled, her vision blurred, and before she could cry out, she fell hard onto the pavement. Darkness swallowed everything instantly, and the last thing she remembered was the sharp buzzing sound in her head, like 1,000 bees swarming inside her ears. When consciousness slowly returned, the buzzing did not stop, it only grew louder, mixed with a rough, grating voice that felt like sandpaper scraping against her eardrums. Useless little thief. Ungrateful brat. This is what happens when we feed animals that have no gratitude. Sneaking into the kitchen in the dead of night, gnawing on the dry rations like a starved rat. Fengyu tried to open her heavy eyelids. Her body felt heavy, aching, and strangely small. She realized she is kneeling on a cold, rough earthen floor. The air smelled of mold, old grease, and unwashed clothes. This is definitely not the clean pavement she had fallen on, nor the sterile white of a hospital room. As the fog in her mind cleared a little more, she looked down. What she saw sent a jolt of shock through her system. Her hands were thin, bony, and covered in faint bruises and calluses. She's wearing a dress made of rough, gray cloth, faded so much that the original color was unrecognizable, full of holes and mended repeatedly with patches of different colored fabrics. Her feet were bare inside old, tattered shoes that were stitched together with coarse thread, looking as if they would fall apart with one more step. This isn't my body, she thought, her heart pounding. This is a child's body. She looked up slowly. Standing in front of her is an old woman with a face full of wrinkles, hair pulled back in a greasy bun, and a bulky build wearing a dirty apron. This is Auntie Ma, the head cook of the Compassionate Orphanage, a name that rang faintly in her mind, along with a flood of fragmented memories. She realized then, she is no longer Shinfengyu, the wealthy young lady from 2026. She is now Wei Lan, a 12-year-old orphan in an ancient world, alone, poor, and despised by everyone around her. You dare look at me? Auntie Ma shrieked, raising her hand as if to strike her. Stealing food in the middle of the night. You little wretch, do you know how precious every grain of rice is here? You deserve to be starved to death. Fengyu, now Wei Lan, felt a surge of anger rising in her chest. In her previous life, she had never even been spoken to harshly, let alone scolded and threatened like this. But before she could retort, heavy footsteps approached from the corridor outside. The door creaked open, and in walked a woman in her early 30s, dressed in finer robes but with a cold, sharp face. This is Madame Liu, the director of the orphanage. She looked irritated, her hair messy from being woken up, and she glared at the scene before her. What is all this noise? It is the middle of the night. Do you want to wake the whole place up? She snapped, her voice sharp. Auntie Ma immediately turned, putting on a dramatic, wronged expression and pointed a thick finger at Wei Lan. Director, look at this child. I caught her red-handed in the kitchen, sneaking around to steal steamed buns and pickles. This isn't the first time she's caused trouble. She is lazy, greedy, and causes nothing but headaches. You must punish her severely to set an example for the others. Madame Liu looked down at Wei Lan with undisguised disgust, as if she were looking at a pile of rubbish. Always you, Wei Lan. You are nothing but a burden to this place. We feed you, clothe you. And this is how you repay our kindness. She waved her hand dismissively. Lock her in the basement. Let her reflect on her mistakes there. I will deal with her properly tomorrow morning. Now go, I need my rest. Auntie Ma's face split into a wide, malicious grin. As you command, Director. I'll make sure she stays nice and quiet down there. She grabbed Wei Lan by the arm with a grip like iron, dragging her roughly out of the room. Wei Lan did not resist. Her head was still throbbing, her thoughts were still sorting through the sudden transmigration, and her body was exhausted. She let herself be pulled along, her expression calm and unreadable. Basement? Fine, she thought. I need sleep more than I need justice right now. We will see what tomorrow brings. The basement was damp, dark, and freezing cold. The air smelled of rot and dust. There was no bed, only a pile of dirty straw in the corner. As soon as the heavy wooden door slammed shut and the lock clicked, Wei Lan sat down on the straw, wrapped her thin arms around herself, and closed her eyes. She had survived worse shocks in her mind. Physical discomfort was something she could endure for now. The next morning, sunlight had barely touched the ground when the heavy door was pulled open with a loud screech. Before Wei Lan could even open her eyes, a bucket of ice-cold water was thrown directly at her, soaking her from head to toe instantly. Get up, you lazy thing. The director is waiting. Auntie Ma's voice cackled, enjoying the sight of the shivering girl. Hurry up. Don't think you can pretend to be dead. Wei Lan slowly stood up. Her clothes clung to her skin, cold and heavy. The shock of the cold water seemed to wash away the last bit of dizziness and confusion in her mind. She straightened her back, her eyes narrowing dangerously. She had had enough. As Auntie Ma reached out to grab her hair to drag her out again, Wei Lan moved faster than the old woman expected. She stepped forward, lifted her leg, and stomped down onto Auntie Ma's right foot with all her strength, her shoe grinding into the old woman's toes. My foot. You little monster. Auntie Ma screamed, doubling over in pain. Wei Lan didn't stop there. She placed both hands on the woman's heavy shoulder and shoved her backward with such force that Auntie Ma lost her balance and fell hard onto the wet, dirty floor, splashing dirty water everywhere. Wei Lan looked down at her, her eyes sharp and terrifying, no longer looking like the timid, bullied child everyone knew. She turned around without a word and marched out of the basement. She walked straight toward the director's office. When she reached the door, she didn't bother knocking. She lifted her leg and kicked the heavy wooden door open with a loud bang that echoed through the hallway. Madame Lu, who was sitting comfortably behind her desk drinking tea, jumped up in shock, the teacup almost slipping from her hand. She stared at the dripping, disheveled girl standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with surprise. Wei Lan walked in as if she owned the place. She walked right past the desk, went to the side, and sat herself down on the soft, velvet-covered sofa meant only for guests and the director. She sat straight, water dripping onto the expensive fabric, soaking it instantly. Get up. Are you insane? Madame Lu shrieked, her face twisting with anger. Get off that sofa immediately. You are making it dirty. Who gave you permission to sit there? Wei Lan ignored her completely. She sat there, dripping wet, staring at Madame Lu with a cold, unblinking gaze that made the director feel a strange chill run down her spine. Before Madame Lu could launch into another tirade of scolding, Wei Lan spoke. Her voice was still young, but it carried a terrifying calmness and absolute certainty. I am leaving this place, Wei Lan said slowly, each word clear and heavy. I know I am nothing but a burden to you. I know I am just a mouth to feed and a body to clothe, and you hate that you have to spend even a copper coin on me. Fine. I will leave. I will never step foot here again, and you will never have to see my face again. Madame Lu was stunned for a second, then sneered, You want to leave? Who said you can leave? You belong here. I am not asking for permission, Wei Lan interrupted, her voice dropping lower, turning sharp and fierce. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes flashing with a dangerous light. I am telling you, if you do not let me go freely and give me what I deserve, I will burn this entire orphanage to the ground. I will set fire to every corner, and I will stay right here until the end. We will all turn to ashes together. Do you want to test me? The sheer ferocity in the 12-year-old's eyes made Madame Lu instinctively take a step back, her hands trembling slightly. Fear began to creep into her heart. This was not the quiet, fearful Wei Lan she knew. This was a wild beast cornered and ready to bite. You dare. Madame Lu stammered, trying to regain her authority. Wei Lan didn't let her speak. She suddenly kicked the low table in front of the sofa. The heavy wood scraped loudly against the floor and tipped over, cups and teapot crashing down with a loud smash. "Don't try me," Wei Lan roared, her voice ringing in the room. "Here is the deal. You will write a document releasing me from this orphanage completely. And you will give me 50 taels of silver as compensation for all the years I lived here, for all the beatings, the hunger, and the suffering you caused me. If you don't, I will walk straight to the magistrate's office myself. And I will tell him everything." She paused, letting the threat sink in, then smiled coldly. "I will tell him exactly how you embezzled the public funds he personally donated for the orphans. I know exactly how much you took, and I know you took it to the gambling house in the West District. I saw you. And I know where you hid the remaining money and the account books." Madame Lu's face turned as white as paper. Her legs gave way, and she almost fell into her chair. That was her biggest secret, her biggest crime. If this got out, she wouldn't just lose her job, she would be exiled or beheaded. You little witch." Madame Lu gritted her teeth. Panic turned into rage. She reached behind her desk and pulled out a long, thick wooden stick carved with patterns. Her so-called discipline stick. She used this to beat the children whenever she was angry or bored. "You dare threaten me? I will beat you to death today and say you tried to run away." She swung the stick high up in the air, aiming straight for Wei Lan's head. But Wei Lan had grown up in a modern world where she knew how to react fast, and in this body, desperation gave her speed. She didn't flinch. She ducked, letting the heavy stick whistle past her ear and slam into the sofa. Before Madame Lu could pull it back, Wei Lan lunged forward, grabbed the edge of the low desk she kicked, and with a burst of strength fueled by adrenaline and pure hatred, she lifted it up and smashed it sideways directly at Madame Lu. The table hit Madame Lu squarely on the side of her head. She let out a gurgling scream, blood immediately pouring down her face from a deep gash. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed onto the floor, unconscious before she even hit the ground. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the terrifying, cold gaze of the young girl standing over her. Wei Lan didn't waste a second. She quickly rummaged through the drawers of the director's desk. There it was, several heavy ingots of silver and loose coins, exactly as she remembered seeing before. She grabbed a wooden box from the corner, dumped all the silver inside, and tucked it securely under her arm. She also found the file with her name, Wei Lan, written on it. Her record of residence and identity proof. She crumpled it and stuffed it into her tattered dress pocket. Outside the room, people had definitely heard the loud crashes and screams. The other orphans and the staff exchanged glances, whispering. Wei Lan must be getting beaten half to death again, they thought. It's best not to interfere or we'll get hit too. None of them dared to come closer, assuming the girl was already being taught a harsh lesson. They were wrong. Wei Lan slipped out of the office quietly, sticking close to the walls and shadows. She knew the layout of this place better than anyone. She had spent every corner of her life here. She ran straight to the back storage warehouse, a dusty building filled with old tools and discarded items. She found a rough, thick sack, stuffed the box of silver inside it, and tied it tight. Moving silently like a shadow, she crept toward the back wall. Near the corner, hidden behind tall weeds and piles of firewood, was a gaping hole in the wall, originally made for a guard dog that had died years ago. It was small, but big enough for a thin 12-year-old to squeeze through. She looked back one last time at the building that had been her prison. A cold smirk touched her lips. Then, with a quick, fluid motion, she crawled through the hole, dragging her sack behind her, and disappeared into the narrow, muddy alley outside. The sun was rising higher in the sky, casting long shadows on the ancient streets. Wei Lan adjusted the heavy sack on her back, took a deep breath of the fresh air, and walked steadily toward the main road. As she walked quickly away from the high walls of the orphanage, her steps light but determined, Shen Fengyu, or rather, the soul now inhabiting Wei Lan's body, spoke softly within her mind. addressing the lingering fragments and memories of the poor child whose life she had inherited. "Rest now, little one," she murmured silently, her gaze sharp and cold as she looked ahead at the winding ancient streets. "I have avenged you for today. I have repaid every slap, every insult, every bit of hunger and cold they forced upon you. But mark my words, this is not the end. I will not stop until everyone who ever wronged you has paid their full price, tenfold or 100-fold." Last night, while she lay shivering on the damp straw in the basement, sleep had not come easily at first. But the moment she finally drifted off, a torrent of memories flooded her mind, bright, painful, and vivid. She saw through Wei Lan's eyes every time Auntie Ma deliberately scraped her skin while scrubbing her clothes until they bled. She saw Madame Lu smiling coldly as she took donations meant for the children and hid them away. She felt the gnawing hunger that lasted for days, the freezing nights without a blanket, and the endless whispers that she was cursed and unwanted. By the time she woke up to that bucket of freezing water this morning, Shen Fengyu hadn't been confused or scared. She had been ready. She knew exactly who everyone was, what crimes they had committed, where they hid their things, and exactly which buttons to press to break them. And as for me, she continued her inner monologue, adjusting the heavy sack on her shoulder. "I am stuck here now. There is no smartphone, no airplanes, no modern convenience, and no way I know of to return to the year 2026, but crying over it changes nothing. Since I am here, and since I have been given a second chance to be 12 years old again, I will make it worthwhile. I will enjoy this life fully, with none of the restrictions or rules I had back home. And best of all," a confident smirk touched her lips, "I carry the knowledge, science, strategies, and ideas of the modern world. In this ancient era, with this advantage, I am not just a little girl, I am a force no one here can comprehend." After a long while of walking and running, she turned into a narrow, quiet alleyway, away from the busy main road. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, she carefully untied the rough sack. Her fingers brushed against the heavy silver ingots, those she kept safely wrapped in a cloth inside, but she reached for the pile of copper coins jingling at the bottom. She counted out a handful. It was enough for what she needed first. She needed to blend in, and looking like a beggar was the fastest way to draw trouble. Tucking the money securely into her sleeve, she stepped out of the alley and back onto the bustling street. The sounds of vendors shouting, horses neighing, and people chatting filled the air. It was a lively market scene, rich with the scent of steamed buns, fried snacks, and fresh flowers. She scanned her surroundings with keen eyes until she spotted a simple but well-stocked clothing stall made of bamboo poles and canvas. She walked over slowly. Her small frame was thin and petite. Wei Lan had been malnourished for years, so she looked even younger than 12, delicate and light. The stall owner, a middle-aged woman with a kind face, looked up. When she saw the state of the girl, tattered gray dress, messy hair, skin slightly dirty and scratched, her brows furrowed in confusion. She was about to speak, perhaps to chase away a beggar, but she stopped short when the young girl stopped in front and spoke in a clear, calm voice that held no trace of timidity. "Auntie, I want to buy nice clothes. The best you have, in that shade of purple over there." The woman blinked, surprised by the girl's demeanor. But when she saw the girl pull out a handful of copper coins, enough to buy the whole rack twice over, her expression changed instantly. A wide, welcoming smile spread across her face. "Oh? Purple? Such good taste, young miss. That color looks very dignified and will suit you perfectly." She quickly took down a set of deep purple hanfu, made of smooth, lightweight cotton that felt soft to the touch. It was a simple design, with a cross-collar and wide sleeves, but clean and elegant. "This is the smallest size we have. Try it. You are slender, so it will fit you just right." Fengyu nodded, feeling the fabric. It was much better than the rough burlap she was wearing. "Good. Do you also sell a bag I can carry on my back or shoulder? And a pair of shoes, cloth ones, durable and comfortable." Of course, of course." The owner hurriedly fetched a sturdy dark blue canvas bag with strong straps, Then she went to a stall nearby, and when she came back, she's holding a pair of black cloth shoes with thick soles. She even included a wide sash to tie around the waist. After checking everything thoroughly to ensure there were no defects, Feng Yu paid a total of 70 copper coins. It was a fair price, perhaps even a little cheap, but she didn't haggle. She had more important things to worry about. Before taking the items, she looked at the woman. "Auntie, one more thing. Do you know a place nearby where I can wash myself properly? I don't want to soil these new clothes before I even wear them." The owner looked at her dirty appearance and understood immediately. She smiled warmly and gestured behind her. "Follow me, child. I have a small courtyard just behind this alley where I live alone. There is a washing room there. You can clean up in peace." Feng Yu thanked her politely and followed the woman through a winding passage between the houses. They arrived at a small wooden door, which the owner unlocked. Inside was a modest courtyard with a few plants and a small kitchen area. "Go inside that room. There is water already drawn from the well and a tub. Take your time, no one will disturb you. Just leave the door latched," the woman said kindly, before leaving her to her privacy. As soon as the door clicked shut, Feng Yu let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She didn't rush to bathe immediately. Instead, her eyes landed on the bundle of old things she had brought with her. The sack, her rags, and most importantly, the documents she had stolen from the director's office. She walked over to the small stove and fire pit in the corner of the room, used for heating water. She lit it up. "This is the only way to cut ties completely," she thought seriously. "If I keep that paper with the name Wei Lan, I remain an orphan from the compassionate orphanage. If they find that I am alive and escaped, they will hunt me down. But if Wei Lan dies here..." She took out the crumpled identity record from her pocket. She stared at the name written in brush ink, Wei Lan. From today onward, she whispered firmly, her eyes burning with resolve, "Wei Lan is dead. She died in that cold basement, or perhaps she never existed at all. The person standing here now is Shen Fengyu, daughter of the Shen family, traveler from another world. I will carry her memories and her grievances, but I will walk my own path." She tore the document into small pieces and tossed them into the fire. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to gray ash in seconds. Next, she stripped off the rough, tattered gray dress and the patched shoes, leaving her undergarments. Then, she carefully transferred all her money, silver, and remaining copper coins into the new blue bag. One by one, she fed her old life into the fire. As the fabric caught alight, she watched the flames dance for a while. Then she went in to bathe. She scrubbed her skin hard, washing away years of accumulated grime, the smell of mold and dust, and the traces of the basement. As she washed, she noticed something surprising. Her small body, though thin, was surprisingly resilient. She had smashed a heavy table, overpowered 2 adults, and run a long distance, yet she felt only a little tired, not exhausted. "Perhaps it's the adrenaline," she thought, "or perhaps the will to survive gave me strength I didn't know I had." She decided not to question it too much. Strength was a luxury she would take gratefully. When she finally stepped out from behind the screen, she was a different person. Her hair, now clean and combed neatly down her back, shone black and healthy. Her skin, now free of dirt, was fair and smooth, revealing delicate features that had been hidden under grime. She put on the purple hanfu, tying the sash neatly around her waist. The color brought out the brightness of her eyes, making her look dignified, intelligent, and mysterious. The black shoes fit perfectly, silent and comfortable. She looked at her reflection in the polished copper basin used as a mirror. The girl staring back was no longer a pitiful orphan. She was Shen Fengyu. She went back to the fire pit, stirred the ashes with a stick, ensuring every fragment of paper and thread was reduced to fine dust, unrecognizable and irrecoverable. Then she tossed her old undergarments as well. By now, she imagined the orphanage was in absolute chaos. Madame Lu was likely waking up with a massive headache and a missing fortune. Auntie Ma was probably hopping around on her bruised foot, screaming about her being severely punished. They would send people to search, of course. But they would be looking for a ragged, gray-clad orphan girl, not a clean, well-dressed young miss in purple walking with her head held high. She stayed for a while outside, drying her hair and taking in some vitamin D. Before leaving, she opened the windows, took a broom she found in the corner and swept the floor clean, and tidying up the fire area until it was spotless and making sure everything is burned. Picking up her blue bag and slinging it over her shoulder, she stepped out into the courtyard and locked the door. She walked out to the street again, her stomach letting out a loud, undeniable growl. Right. She hadn't eaten a single proper bite since she arrived in this world. The little strength she had used to fight and escape had completely drained her reserves. She felt lightheaded with hunger. First things first, she thought, her eyes scanning the street stalls again with a new, confident gleam. I need to get as far away from this district as possible before they start asking questions. I'll find an inn in the outer city or even outside the gates if I can. But before that, I am going to eat until I am full. I want meat, rice, soup, and everything good this era has to offer. With a slight smile curving her lips, the newly born Shinfeng walked toward the nearest food stall, her posture straight, her steps steady, ready to conquer this ancient world one meal and one challenge at a time. She continued walking along the bustling main street, her steps light and her eyes scanning the signs hanging above every doorway, until she spotted a building that looked clean, spacious, and inviting. A large wooden signboard swung gently in the breeze, bearing 3 bold, golden characters, the Jade and Spice Pavilion. It was a well-known establishment in the city, famous for its rich flavors and fine cooking. Upon stepping inside, a wave of warm air washed over her, carrying the rich, mouth-watering aroma of braised meat, fried garlic, steamed dough, and aromatic spices. The scent was so intense and delicious that it made her empty stomach twist and growl loudly, demanding attention. The place was lively, filled with the chatter of customers and the clinking of bowls and chopsticks, and every smell seemed to call out to her, making her hunger feel 10 times worse than before. A young attendant, wearing a clean gray robe and a welcoming smile, quickly approached her. Seeing a young girl standing alone, he bowed politely and asked, "Greetings, young miss. How may I assist you today? Are you waiting for your family, or do you wish to be seated?" Fengyu looked up at him, her eyes clear and bright, and smiled confidently, a smile that held a maturity far beyond her 12 years. "I wish to eat," she said calmly, her voice clear enough to be heard over the noise of the restaurant. "Please bring me 1 whole roasted chicken, crispy skin and juicy meat, the best you have. A large bowl of beef noodles with extra broth and chili oil. 5 steamed pork and cabbage buns. Also, add a plate of braised pork belly, a bowl of steamed white rice, a portion of stir-fried vegetables with garlic, a small jar of sweet osmanthus wine, well, warm sweet syrup instead. And a plate of red bean cakes for dessert. Oh, and a bowl of thick egg drop soup." The attendant's eyes grew wider and wider with every item she listed. By the end, his mouth was slightly agape in pure shock. He blinked rapidly, looking down at her small, slender frame, then glancing around the entrance and the street outside, expecting to see a group of adults or servants following behind her. Surely, such a massive order was meant for a whole family or a table of guests. But there was no one. She was completely alone. Forgive me for asking, miss," the attendant stammered, scratching his head nervously. "But are you certain you ordered all this for yourself? That is quite a large amount of food. Will you truly be able to finish it all?" Fengyu just smiled wider, nodded firmly, and began walking toward a clean table near the window. "Yes, of course. Bring everything I asked for, exactly as I said." She was about to pull out the wooden bench and sit down when the attendant stepped forward again, his expression turning slightly suspicious and wary. It wasn't uncommon for street urchins or beggars to come in and order food they couldn't pay for, hoping to eat a little before being chased out. "Wait a moment, miss. Forgive me again, but do you have the money to cover such a feast?" Fengyu stopped. She didn't get angry or offended. Instead, she calmly opened the flap of her new blue bag, reached inside, and pulled out a gleaming, heavy silver ingot, much more than enough to buy the entire meal 10 times over. She placed it on the table with a soft clink sound that caught the attention of nearby tables. "Here," she said coolly. "Take this. Calculate the total cost of everything I ordered, keep the price, and bring me back the change. I do not like waiting." The attendant's face paled slightly, then flushed red with embarrassment. He immediately bowed low, nearly touching his forehead to his hands. "My apologies, young miss. Please forgive my rudeness. I will bring everything immediately." He grabbed the silver as if it were hot coal and hurried toward the kitchen, shouting the order loud and clear. Fengyu sat down comfortably, smoothing out the folds of her purple hanfu. After barely a minute, another attendant came over carrying a porcelain pot and a cup. He poured steaming, fragrant tea for her and smiled respectfully. "Here is your tea, young Mississippi. Please be patient. Your dishes are being prepared fresh and will be out shortly." Fengyu nodded graciously, picked up the cup, and took a slow sip. The warm liquid soothed her throat and warmed her body, but it did nothing to calm the raging hunger inside her. She tapped her fingers lightly on the table, her eyes focused and calm. 10 minutes later, the feast began to arrive. First came the large bowl of beef noodles, steam rising high, red with chili oil and sprinkled with green onions. Then came the whole roasted chicken, golden brown and glistening with oil, smelling so savory it made people turn their heads. One by one, the 5 meat buns arrived, fluffy and white, followed by the braised pork belly that glistened with sweet sauce, the vibrant green vegetables, the soup, white rice, and finally the sweet red bean cakes. The table, which was quite large, was soon completely filled with plates and bowls, leaving barely any space to put down a cup. Then the attendant said they are sorry for they don't know what is an egg drop soup and a crispy skin, so they added another dish of meat. She just nodded and thought to herself the food she mentioned aren't no yet in this era. The whole restaurant had gone quiet, eyes drifting toward the young girl in purple sitting alone. Whispers started spreading like ripples in water. "Did you see that? That child ordered enough food for 5 grown men. Look at her small frame. How can she possibly eat all that? Is she crazy? Maybe she is from a wealthy family and has a big appetite, but she's just a little girl." Fengyu ignored every single gaze and whisper. To her, they were nothing but background noise. She picked up her chopsticks, took a deep breath, and then she began to eat. She ate with speed, precision, and incredible efficiency. There was no mess, no waste, and no hesitation. Her hands moved quickly, chopsticks clicking rhythmically against the porcelain. She tore the tender meat off the chicken bones with her teeth, swallowed mouthfuls of noodles almost instantly, and devoured the rich braised pork as if it were air. To the onlookers, it looked as though a starving wolf had been unleashed. She was devouring the food in front of her, plate after plate disappearing at a terrifying speed. She ate well, she ate heartily, and she ate with a focus that blocked out the entire world. She was halfway through the noodles when the trouble arrived. From a table near the door, a man in his late 20s, wearing rough clothes with a sword hanging at his waist, looking like a wandering thug or a low-level bodyguard, stood up. He had been watching her with a greedy, leering look ever since the food arrived. He wiped his mouth, smirked arrogantly, and swaggered over to her table. He cleared his throat loudly, ahem, to announce his presence, then pulled out the bench opposite Fengyu and sat down uninvited. He leaned back, spreading his legs wide, and spoke in a fake, sickeningly sweet tone. "Little girl, eating all this food alone? TSK, TSK. That is far too much for such a small thing as you. This big brother here is actually quite worried that you might get a stomach ache or get sick from overeating. And such good food, it would be a terrible sin to let it go to waste, wouldn't it? So, I decided to be kind and share it with you. Consider it me helping you out." Fengyu did not stop eating. She didn't even pause or slow down. She didn't look up at him, didn't acknowledge his existence, and didn't change her expression. She simply lifted the chicken leg to her mouth and took another bite. The man saw her silence and her lack of reaction and assumed she was just a timid, rich little girl too scared to speak up. His smirk widened, turning more predatory. See? You agree, right? Good child. Without waiting for permission, he reached out his dirty hand straight toward the plate of roasted chicken, fingers closing around the other drumstick. Then I shall help myself first. Bam! A loud, sharp crash echoed through the restaurant as Feng Yu's hand slammed heavily onto the table surface, shaking the plates and splashing soup out of the bowls. The sound was like thunder in the quiet room. She finally looked up. Her eyes were no longer calm or focused on food. They were dark, sharp, and filled with a terrifying, cold fierceness that felt like a blade cutting right into a soul. She didn't shout. Her voice was low, steady, and dangerous, carrying a heavy warning. Put it down, or you will pay dearly. The man froze for a split second, startled by the sudden change in aura, but then he burst out laughing, loud and mocking. Ha ha, you little thing, threaten me? Do you know who I am? I am doing you a favor. He deliberately took a bite of the chicken leg right in front of her eyes, chewing slowly with a smug, challenging look. Delicious. See? Waste not, want no. He never finished his sentence. Feng Yu stood up abruptly, her movement so fast it was almost a blur. She walked around the table, right up to his side. Before the man could even swallow or stand up to defend himself, her small hand shot out, gripping his wrist. The same hand holding the chicken leg, with a strength that felt like iron pincers. Let go, you little. With a cold, unchanging expression, Feng Yu tightened her grip, turned her body slightly, and with a motion as simple and effortless as tossing a sack of trash, she lifted the grown man, who weighed easily over 150 pounds, completely off the ground. With a soft grunt, she swung him sideways and flung him away. The man flew through the air, crashing into an empty table 3 meters away, splintering the wooden legs and scattering bowls and chopsticks everywhere before he finally landed hard on the floor, groaning in pain, dazed and unable to get up. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence filled the Jade and Spice Pavilion. Every customer, every attendant, even the chef who had peeked out from the kitchen, stood frozen in place, eyes wide enough to pop out of their heads. People rubbed their eyes vigorously, wondering if they were hallucinating. Did you see that? Someone whispered hoarsely. She picked him up like he was a pillow. That was a grown man. And she's just a child, a girl. Feng Yu stood there amidst the shock and stares, looking completely unbothered. She dusted off her purple sleeves slowly and meticulously, as if she had just touched something dirty and needed to clean herself. Her face showed no surprise, no anger, and no pride. It was as if tossing a man across the room was the most ordinary thing in the world to do. Just a minor interruption to her meal. She turned around calmly, walked back to her seat, sat down gracefully, picked up her chopsticks again exactly where she had left off, and continued eating. She dipped a piece of chicken into the sauce, put it in her mouth, chewed and swallowed, her expression returning to that trance-like focus, completely ignoring the groaning man on the floor and the hundreds of eyes watching her in utter terror and awe. To Shen Feng Yu, the hunger was still there, and food was precious. No rude, arrogant man was going to make her waste a single bite. Feng Yu continues eating steadily, finishing every last grain of rice, every scrap of meat, and every drop of soup until not a single thing remains on the table. Only then does she reach out for the plate of red bean cakes, her dessert, and takes a delicate bite of the sweet, soft pastry. It is at this moment that the noise around her seems to filter back into her mind, and realization rushes over her like a cold wave. She pauses, the cake still halfway to her mouth. Her eyes drift to the side, landing on the man still sprawled on the floor, groaning and clutching his ribs, his face pale with pain. Then she glances around at the entire restaurant, every customer, every attendant, all staring at her with expressions of utter shock, awe, and disbelief. Slowly, she looks down at her own small hands, the same hands currently resting on the table. A warm flush creeps up her neck and spreads across her cheeks, turning them a soft pink. Oh my goodness, she thinks, and a sudden, incredulous laugh bubbles up inside her mind. What did I just do? In her past life, she was just an ordinary young woman, pampered and soft. She had never even lifted anything heavier than a suitcase or a grocery bag. Yet today, she actually grabbed a fully grown man, one who looked heavy and muscular, and lifted him off the ground as if he weighed nothing at all. She threw him through the air like he was made of paper, tossing him aside without even breaking a sweat or straining a muscle. She stares at her palms, her heart beating fast, not from fear, but from wild, rising excitement. Her eyes suddenly beam with bright, unmasked joy and amazement. This means I am strong. Exceptionally strong. Stronger than any trained fighter or soldier in this era, probably. Everything she had done at the orphanage. Stomping on Auntie Ma's foot, pushing her down, breaking down the door, lifting and smashing the desk, all those things that had surprised her earlier now made perfect sense. This body, this new life. It comes with a gift far greater than money or status, incredible, supernatural strength. This is amazing, she thinks, barely able to contain her grin. With this kind of power, who in this world can ever bully me again? Who can stop me? Her happy thoughts are interrupted when the young attendant from before approaches her table again. He walks very slowly, his steps cautious, his head slightly bowed, clearly still terrified of the girl who just threw a man across the room. In his hands, he holds a small tray filled with strings of copper coins, her change from the payment she gave earlier. He stops a safe distance away, holding the tray out shakily. "Yeah, young miss, here is your change." Fomu looks up at him, her expression instantly shifting. She presses her lips together, putting on a look of soft, pitiful remorse, her eyes wide and innocent. She speaks in a gentle, meek voice that sounds nothing like the fierce tone she used moments ago. Thank you. But wait, please deduct some money from this. Forgive me. I caused such a scene and destroyed your tables and bowls. It is my fault for losing my temper. Please, take enough to cover all the damages. I cannot just leave and let your restaurant suffer losses because of me. The attendant blinks, confused and flustered. He waves his hands quickly, almost dropping the tray. No. Young miss, please do not say that. It is truly not your fault at all. That man was rude and uninvited. Everyone saw it. You were only defending yourself and your food. We cannot possibly take your money for that. Fomu looks at him, tilting her head slightly, her gaze steady and questioning. The attendant feels the pressure of her look and turns his head quickly toward the front counter, calling out to the shopkeeper to please come over. A middle-aged man with a kind face and a neat beard walks out from behind the counter. He is the shopkeeper of the Jade and Spice Pavilion. He had watched the whole incident calmly and knew exactly what had happened. He walks over with steady steps and bows respectfully to Fomu. "What is the matter, young miss? What troubles you?" The attendant explains quickly. This young miss insists on paying compensation for the broken table and dishes. But it was not her mistake at all. I told her it is unnecessary, but she still insists. The shopkeeper looks down at the small girl in purple. He sees the sincerity in her eyes, but also recognizes the sharpness hidden beneath. He smiles warmly and shakes his head firmly. "Little miss, please put your heart at ease. We have run this restaurant for many years and have seen all kinds of people. Every single person here witnessed what occurred. That man was a troublemaker who disrespected you and tried to take what was yours. You did nothing wrong. In fact, you did us a favor by chasing away a rogue who often disturbs our customers. The damage is our responsibility to handle, and we will not accept a single copper coin from you for it. Please keep your money." Fomu listens to him carefully, nodding slowly as if she is only half convinced. She doesn't argue further. Instead, she reaches out and takes the tray of change, counting it quickly and tucking every bit of it safely inside her blue bag, securing the flap tight. Then, she glances at the remaining red bean cakes on her plate. She had only taken one bite. She picks up the plate gracefully and holds it out toward the shopkeeper and the attendant, offering it with both hands. Then, "I shall listen to you, sir. But please, take these desserts as a small token of my thanks for your kindness and for letting me eat here." The food was delicious, truly the best I have ever tasted. "Thank you for your understanding." Before either of them can reply or refuse, she bows deeply and politely at the waist, her movements quick and graceful. "Thank you very much. I must be on my way now." And just like that, she turns around, hoists her bag onto her shoulder, and runs toward the entrance, her purple sleeves fluttering behind her like butterfly wings. She vanishes out the door and into the busy street in the blink of an eye, leaving only the lingering scent of sweet beans and spices behind. For a moment, the whole place remains silent again. Then, slowly, the tension breaks and people start to laugh and talk loudly, shaking their heads in amusement and wonder. "Did you see that?" She was ready to pay for the damage even though she was the one wronged. Such strength, yet such a kind and considerate heart. And she bowed so politely before running away. She really is lovely. One moment she is a fierce little warrior throwing bandits, the next she is a sweet, well-mannered child giving away cakes. She is truly a mystery. I have never met a girl like her before. I wonder who she really is. The shopkeeper stands there holding the plate of leftover cakes, looking at the empty doorway where she disappeared, a thoughtful smile on his face. Fomu runs swiftly through the winding streets, her clothes fluttering behind her like a vivid shadow, until the noise and chatter of the Jade and Spice Pavilion fade completely into the distance. She doesn't slow down until she reaches a quieter stretch of road near the outer edge of the city, where fewer people pass by. Only then does she stop, leaning casually against the rough stone wall of a building, breathing in and out in slow, calm breaths. Her chest rising and falling steadily without the slightest sign of exhaustion. She glances down at her hand, realizing she still clutches a soft, sweet steamed bun she had bitten before rushing out, completely forgotten in her haste. With a small, amused huff, she stuffs the whole thing into her mouth, chewing it happily while her sharp eyes scan her surroundings. The sun is already high up going to the western direction. "I can't stay here a moment longer," she thinks seriously, swallowing the last bite. Even though I handled that trouble easily, news travels fast. By now, someone from the restaurant might talk, or people from the orphanage could start asking around. I need to put distance between me and this city before the heavy gates close for the night. She pushes off the wall and walks briskly toward the wide, open area near the main city gate. That is where travelers and carriages usually gather. Just as she expected, near a row of large old trees, she spots a group of men busily hauling heavy bundles, wooden crates, and large sacks filled with goods into the back of two sturdy, horse-drawn carriages. The horses are strong and well-fed, and the carriages look solid and built for long journeys. Merchants, she concludes immediately, observing the way they mark their goods and move with practiced efficiency. Perfect. She straightens her posture, smoothing out her clothes to look as neat and composed as possible, and walks over confidently. She stops beside a man who is wiping sweat from his forehead, his arms thick and strong from hard labor. "Uncle," she calls out politely, her voice clear and sweet. "Are you people traveling to Lianxi City?" Lianxi City. The name rolls off her tongue naturally. She had heard it mentioned in Weiland's old memories as a prosperous trade hub located several days' journey to the west, famous for its markets and being far enough away to be a fresh start. The man pauses, looking down at the small girl in purple. He scratches his head in confusion, surprised that such a young child knows the route so well. "Aye, little miss, that's right. We're heading straight for Lianxi." Fomu's face lights up with a bright, hopeful smile. She steps a little closer. "That is wonderful. I am actually going there too. I have relatives living there whom I need to visit. Would it be possible for me to travel along with your group?" "I promise I won't be any trouble at all, and I am fully willing to pay for the ride, of course." The man's eyes widen slightly. He looks her up and down. She is small, delicate, and clearly traveling alone. He scratches his head again, looking unsure. Well, that's not for me to decide, young miss. You wait here a moment. I will go and ask our master. He is the owner of the goods and the leader of our group. Thank you very much, uncle. I will wait right here, Feng Yu replies with a gracious bow. The man hurries over to the second carriage, where a middle-aged man with a dignified air and a neatly trimmed beard is checking a list of items on a piece of paper. They speak quietly for a minute, glancing over at Feng Yu several times. Eventually, the bearded man nods and walks over to her himself, his boots making a heavy sound on the dusty ground. He stands before her, looking down with a calm but assessing gaze. Little miss, my servant tells me you wish to travel with us to Lianxi City. Is this true? Feng Yu nods vigorously, her expression earnest and innocent. Yes, sir. I really need to go there. And please, do not worry, I have money. I can pay you well for the space and the safety. The merchant folds his arms, his brow furrowing with concern. I appreciate your offer, child. But you must understand, this is not a short, easy trip. It will take us 3 or 4 days of hard travel, sleeping in the open or at rough-way stations. The roads are not always safe, there are bandits sometimes, and wild animals in the hills. It is dangerous, and it is a hard journey for a grown man, let alone a young girl like you. Are you sure you cannot wait for your family or guardians to accompany you? Feng Yu shakes her head firmly, her eyes clear and steady as she meets his gaze. I am quite sure, sir. I have no one else to wait for, and I must go. I am tougher than I look, I promise you. I won't complain about the road, and I won't slow you down. Please, just let me come along. The merchant studies her face for a long moment, seeing a resolve that rarely appears in children her age. He sighs softly, realizing she will not be dissuaded. Hesitantly, he nods his head. Very well then. If you are truly certain, you may join us. We will do our best to keep you safe. Go buy whatever supplies or items you need for the road quickly. We depart as soon as we finish loading the last of the goods. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Feng Yu beams, bowing deeply in gratitude. Without wasting another second, she turns and practically skips back toward the market stalls that line the road near the gate. First, she spots a stall selling food, steamed buns stuffed with meat or sweet bean paste, crispy fried cakes, dried fruits, and roasted nuts. She buys a generous amount of everything, enough to last her the whole journey, stuffing them into her blue shoulder bag until it becomes round and bulky, filled to the brim. Next, she moves to a clothing stall that displays fine fabrics and well-made garments. Her eyes are drawn immediately to 2 sets of hanfu, one in a soft, fresh peach color with delicate patterns embroidered near the hems, and another in a deep, rich blue that reminds her of a clear sky at noon. Both are made of smooth, breathable cotton, durable enough for travel, but elegant in design. She picks them out, along with 2 sets of soft undergarments and wide, comfortable sashes to tie them. She also finds a sturdy, large crossbody bag made of thick canvas. Gray in color, with strong leather straps and plenty of hidden pockets inside. Perfect for hiding silver and important things, she thinks, immediately swapping her money into the hidden compartments of this new bag, which she slings securely across her chest and back, and stuffs her new clothes inside properly. She continues moving from stall to stall like a whirlwind. She buys simple but pretty hair accessories. Wooden hairpins carved with lotus flowers, silk ribbons in purple and blue to tie her hair back, and a smooth, polished wooden comb. She also grabs practical necessities, a rough but absorbent cotton towel, and a block of scented soap made from natural herbs and honey, which smells fresh and clean. In less than half an hour, she has bought everything she needs, and her arms are loaded with neatly wrapped parcels and bundles. Yet, to her, the weight feels no heavier than carrying a few feathers. She walks back to the merchant convoy, looking like a well-prepared young traveler. The merchant sees her approaching and hurries over, his eyes widening when he sees the pile of things she is holding and carrying. He looks at her small, slender frame, genuinely worried. Little miss, goodness, you bought so much. Are you sure those bundles aren't too heavy for you? Here, let me take some. He reaches out to help, ready to relieve her of the burden. Fengyu just smiles brightly, shaking her head as she shifts the weight effortlessly from one arm to another, looking completely relaxed and unbothered. Oh no, thank you, Uncle Merchant. It is not heavy at all. It feels very light, really. I am quite strong, you see. The man blinks, utterly confused, but seeing that she truly stands straight and doesn't even breathe harder from the load, he just shakes his head in amazement. What a strange, extraordinary child, he thinks to himself. Just then, the last crate is hoisted up and tied securely to the back of the lead carriage. The servants jump onto the driver's seats on top of the cargo. Everything is packed, tied down, and ready. All right. Everything is loaded and secure, the head merchant calls out loudly to his men. He turns back to Fengyu and gestures toward the main carriage, the one meant for the owner and important passengers, which has soft cushions inside. Come then, young miss. Since you are traveling alone, you may ride inside the main carriage with me. It is more comfortable and safer than riding outside with the goods. Climb up quickly, we depart now for Lianxi City. Fengyu nods happily, her heart swelling with excitement and anticipation. She adjusts her crossbody bag, gathers her supplies in her arms, and steps lightly up the wooden steps into the carriage. She settles comfortably onto the soft seat, placing her things neatly beside her. The merchant climbs in after her, sitting opposite her, and pulls the heavy curtain closed to block the dust and wind. Outside, the driver cracks the whip lightly above the horses' heads, and with the creak of wheels and the rhythmic sound of hooves hitting the dirt road, the carriage lurches forward. Through the small opening from the curtain, Fengyu watches the walls of this city slowly recede into the distance, disappearing behind clouds of dust. She takes a deep breath, tasting the fresh air of the open road, and a confident, sharp smile curves her lips. The wheels of the carriage rolled steadily over the packed dirt road, moving smoothly away from the towering city gates of Qingyun City. The rhythmic creaking of the wood and the soft clip-clop of the horses' hooves created a soothing melody. Dust rose in gentle clouds behind them, and soon, the bustling noise of the market and the city streets faded into the distance, replaced by the quiet rustle of wind through the fields and the distant songs of birds. Inside the carriage, Fengyu sat comfortably by the small window opening, her posture straight and relaxed. She breathed in the fresh, untainted air deeply, her chest rising and falling in a slow, calm rhythm. The tension that had filled her body since waking up in that cold basement finally began to melt away. Her eyes were fixed on the passing scenery, the green rice paddies stretching like emerald quilts, the farmers working in the distance, and the rolling hills covered in lush trees. Her gaze was clear, composed, and held a depth of maturity that was rarely seen in children. Sitting opposite her, the merchant watched her quietly for a while. He had traveled many roads and met all kinds of people, young and old, rich and poor. But never had he seen a child like this one. Most children her age would be fidgeting, crying, or chattering endlessly with excitement or fear during a long journey. Yet, Fengyu sat there as if she were a seasoned traveler or a noble lady who had been on carriages her entire life, completely at peace, observing the world with a cool, assessing gaze. Curiosity finally got the better of him. He leaned back against the soft cushion, folding his hands over his lap, and spoke in a gentle, deep voice. Little miss, we have been traveling for a while now, yet you haven't shown a single sign of discomfort or worry. You truly are different from other children. I realized I haven't properly asked for your name yet. May I know what I should call you? Fengyu turned her head slowly, pulling her eyes away from the passing landscape. She looked at him and offered a bright, warm smile that reached all the way to her eyes, softening the sharp intelligence in them. Uncle Merchant, you are very kind. My name is Fengyu. I am 12 years old this year. Fengyu. The name rolled off his tongue, sounding elegant and meaningful, phoenix and jade. It was a name that carried weight and grace, the kind usually given to daughters of good families. He nodded slowly, committing it to memory. A beautiful name indeed. Very fitting. Fengyu tilted her head slightly, her expression innocent and curious. And what is your name, uncle? I should know the name of the person kind enough to give me a ride, shouldn't I? The merchant let out a low, hearty chuckle, his beard shaking with emotion. Forgive my manners. My name is Bai Huayuan. Everyone in the business and these roads knows me as Merchant Bai. I lead this caravan, and we mostly trade silk, herbs, and fine crafts between the cities. He looked at her again, his eyes scanning her slender frame and delicate features. A thoughtful look crossed his face. Though, speaking of age, you say you are 12? Forgive me for saying so, but you look quite small and thin for 12 years of age. You are not very tall and your wrists are as thin as twigs. It makes me wonder what kind of life you lived before this. Fengyu's smile remained unchanged, but inside, she knew exactly why. Years of malnutrition, starvation, and hard labor in that orphanage. Weilan's body never had a chance to grow properly. Aloud, she simply said softly, I was never very good at eating much when I was younger, Uncle Bai. But I am healthy and strong, don't let my looks fool you. Bai Huayuan nodded, but his mind was already racing elsewhere. Shin. That family name was not rare, but it was not common either. Especially when combined with the background of a girl traveling alone with money, fine manners, and such intelligence. His eyes widened slightly as a thought struck him. He lives in Lianxi City. And he knew the power structure there very well. Little Miss Fengyu, he started cautiously, his tone turning a bit more serious. You said you were heading to Lianxi City to visit relatives, and your surname is Shin. By any chance? Are you perhaps related to the Shin clan of Lianxi City? He watched her face closely as he explained, you might know of them. They're a very powerful, wealthy, and influential family in Lianxi. They hold great authority in trade and even have connections with the officials and the magistrate himself. If you are from that branch, then you are truly a young lady of high standing. Fengyu's heart skipped a beat, but her face showed absolutely nothing. She kept her smile natural and shook her head gently, her expression full of genuine confusion. Really? There is a powerful Shin family there? I am not sure, Uncle Bai. I grew up right here in Qingyun City, the one we just left. I have only traveled to Lianxi once or twice before, and I never paid attention to the big families there. Our family has always been small and quiet. I don't think I am related to such great people. Of course that is a lie, Fengyu thought silently, her eyes glinting with amusement. I just made up a story about relatives, and now there happens to be a powerful family sharing my surname? What a wonderful coincidence. This is even better. If people think I might be connected to them, they will think twice before causing me trouble. But I must be careful not to claim it directly. Let them guess on their own. Bai Huayuan accepted her answer with a nod, though the doubt and curiosity still lingered in his eyes. She doesn't seem to be lying, he thought. But that name, that demeanor, there is definitely something special about this child. Seeing that he had finished his question, Fengyu shifted the topic smoothly, leaning forward slightly with genuine interest shining in her eyes. She called out to him sweetly, Uncle Merchant. Uncle Bai, since you travel so much and lead such a big caravan, I have always wondered, what is it like being a merchant? You must have seen so many places and met so many people. But I also heard that the roads are dangerous. Have you ever encountered bandits on the way? What happened? Did you fight them off? Her curiosity seemed so pure and childlike, exactly what a 12-year-old girl should be interested in. Bai Huayuan chuckled again, the serious atmosphere vanishing instantly. He relaxed, his eyes lighting up with pride and memories of his years on the road. Little one, you ask the right questions. Being a merchant, it is a life of hard work and excitement. We wake up before the sun rises and rest when the moon is high. We carry goods that people need, we make connections between cities, and yes, we see the whole world, or at least what lies between these cities. He stroked his beard, looking out the window at the wide, empty roads stretching ahead. As for bandits, in all my years traveling this route between Qingyun and Lianxi, have I met them? Of course I have. More times than I can count. These hills and forests are full of gangs who think robbery is easier than honest work. Fengyu listened intently, her elbows resting on her knees and her chin resting in her palms, hanging on to every word. Really? And what did you do? Did you run away? Run. Bai Huayuan laughed heartily, shaking his head. No. You see, child, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I only knew how to run. Every merchant caravan hires guards, strong, skilled fighters trained to protect people and goods. But more than that. He leaned in slightly, his voice lowering as if sharing a secret. Merchants must be smart. We know which roads are safe, which passes to avoid, and sometimes we pay a small fee to the larger groups so they let us pass in peace. It is better to lose a little silver than lives and goods. He paused, his expression turning a bit more stern and serious. But once, about 3 years ago, a group of reckless new bandits didn't know the rules. They blocked our path right where the trees are thickest, about halfway to Lianxi. There were nearly 30 of them, armed with swords and clubs, shouting to kill us and take everything. They didn't care about agreements or respect. Fengyu's eyes widened slightly. What happened then? Bai Huayuan's eyes flashed with the memory. Then we fought. My guards were good men, veterans of many battles. And do not let this gray hair and gentle face fool you. Before I became a merchant owner, I was a soldier in the border army for many years. I know how to handle a blade myself. He patted his waist, where a sturdy sword was hidden beneath his robes. We stood our ground. We protected the carriage and the goods. It was a fierce fight, swords clashing, shouting everywhere, but in the end, we drove them off. We lost some men, yes, but we survived. That is the life of a merchant, Fengyu. You must have sharp eyes, a kind heart, but also the strength and courage to protect what is yours. He looked at her meaningfully, sensing that this lesson might be important for the girl traveling alone. Fengyu nodded slowly, a faint, confident smile touching her lips. That is amazing, Uncle Bai, she said aloud, her voice sweet and admiring. You are truly incredible. I feel much safer traveling with you now. Bai Huayuan beamed with pride, satisfied that he had answered her questions. As the carriage continued to rock gently toward the horizon, toward Lianxi City, Fengyu sat back, comfortable and calm, her mind already spinning new plans and possibilities. They chatted for a long while, Uncle Bai recounting more tales of distant markets, strange goods, and narrow escapes from danger. The rhythm of his deep, steady voice blended perfectly with the soft rocking of the carriage and the clip-clop of hooves on the road, creating a lulling, peaceful atmosphere. Fengyu listened with her chin resting in her palm, her eyelids growing heavier and heavier despite her best efforts to stay awake. The exhaustion finally caught up to her. Slowly, her head drooped to the side, her breathing turned soft and even, and she drifted off into a deep sleep right in the middle of a story about trading rare spices. Uncle Bai noticed the silence fall over her. He stopped speaking immediately, a gentle, indulgent smile spreading across his face as he looked down at her. Poor child, he thought softly, stroking his beard as he observed her peaceful face. She must have been through so much, even though she hides it behind that bright smile and mature behavior. Look at how tired she is. It is already nightfall after all. The sun has set long ago, and the stars are out. We have been traveling for nearly 4 hours straight. It is only natural that she is exhausted. He peered through the carriage opening, seeing that the sky was now a deep indigo, lit by a carpet of stars. The convoy was slowing down, the horses' steps becoming slower and more deliberate. They were approaching a familiar clearing beside a small stream, a perfect spot to make camp for the night. Almost there, little one, he whispered to the sleeping girl. Rest well while you can. A short while later, the carriage came to a complete halt with a final creak of the wheels. The sounds of movement outside, men shouting softly, goods being unloaded, and horses being unhitched filled the air. The sudden stillness and change in sound roused Feng Yu from her sleep. She blinked her eyes open slowly, her vision still a little blurry from rest. She sat up straight quickly, realizing she was alone inside the carriage. Uncle Bai must have stepped out earlier. The vehicle was motionless. She rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand and leaned toward the window opening. Outside, she saw a warm, glowing fire burning brightly, casting dancing shadows on the ground. Several figures were moving around it, gathering wood, setting up pots, and stretching their limbs. She stretched her own arms high above her head and kicked out her legs, releasing the stiffness from sitting so long. Her hands instinctively patted the large crossbody bag and the blue shoulder bag resting beside her, checking that everything was still safe and secure. Satisfied, she tightened her sash, smoothed out the wrinkles in her clothes, and decided to step out. Without waiting for anyone to come help or offer a hand, she grabbed her bags, walked to the carriage door, pushed it open wide, and jumped down lightly and nimbly, landing steadily on the dirt ground without even stumbling. Little miss, you're awake." Uncle Bai's voice came from the side. He had been overseeing the setup, but turned immediately when he heard her land. He walked over quickly, concern in his eyes. "Did you sleep well?" "I am sorry I let you sleep alone inside, but I didn't have the heart to wake you when we stopped." Feng Yu bowed her head slightly, her face flushing with a hint of embarrassment. "Uncle Bai, I should be the one apologizing. I fell asleep while you were talking, and I didn't even wake up to help or prepare anything. I am so sorry for being lazy." Uncle Bai laughed heartily and waved his hand dismissively. "Nonsense. You are a guest, and a young one at that. There is nothing to apologize for. Come, we have just started cooking dinner. The smell is already wonderful. Come and eat while it is hot." Hearing the word dinner, Feng Yu's eyes instantly lit up with delight. She nodded vigorously, the earlier drowsiness vanishing completely. "Really? That sounds amazing. Thank you, Uncle Bai." She followed him closely toward the center of the camp, where a large bonfire crackled cheerfully, sending sparks flying upward into the dark sky. The aroma of hot broth, simmering meat, and steamed grains filled the air, making her stomach growl in anticipation. She sat down on a clean piece of rolled-out mat near the fire, placing her 2 bags carefully beside her feet where she could touch them easily. Uncle Bai handed her a sturdy wooden bowl filled to the brim with warm rice, chunks of tender stewed meat, and a generous ladle of savory vegetable soup. "Here, eat up. You need your strength," he said kindly before moving away to get his own share. Around her, the servants and guards of the caravan were also sitting in small groups, eating their meals. They all cast glances toward the small girl. By now, everyone in the group knew the story. She was a young traveler heading to Lianxi City alone, with no family or escort. Seeing how thin and frail she looked, her wrists as thin as bamboo shoots, her face small and delicate, many of them felt a twinge of pity in their hearts. Such a small, fragile thing traveling alone in this big world, they thought. She must have had a hard life to be so thin. But their pity quickly turned into surprise and quiet admiration as they watched her eat. She didn't eat messily or greedily, but she ate well and with great enthusiasm. Every mouthful was eaten cleanly, she finished every grain of rice, and she showed no distaste for the simple, hearty food. To them, it was clear this child knew what it meant to be hungry and valued food greatly. She was not like the spoiled young masters or ladies who pushed food away just because it wasn't fancy enough. When she finished every last drop of soup, Feng Yu set her empty bowl down near her feet. She then turned her attention to her blue shoulder bag. She unbuckled the flap and pulled out bundles of sweet steamed buns, crispy fried cakes wrapped in oil paper, and packets of dried fruits and roasted nuts. She stood up, holding the treats in her arms, and walked over to the nearest group of servants and guards. With a bright, polite smile, she offered them out. "Uncles, big brothers, please have some. These are sweet and tasty. I brought them along, but I have plenty, and I also got to share your delicious dinner. Please take some." The men looked at the food, then at her, and exchanged awkward glances. They were strong, rough men used to hard work and following orders. How could they take snacks from such a young girl, especially when they were supposed to be protecting? They all shook their heads quickly, bowing slightly. "Thank you, little miss. But no need, we are full already. You keep them, miss. You might get hungry later on the road. We couldn't possibly take your food, please." Fengyu saw them refusing and didn't insist right away. Instead, she turned around and marched straight toward Uncle Bai, who was sitting near the fire finishing his own meal. She stood in front of him, holding her pile of snacks, and looked up at him with big, pleading, earnest eyes. "Uncle Bai," she said softly, her voice carrying clearly over the crackling fire. "I want to share these with everyone. You all worked so hard to travel and cook for everyone, and I just sat in the carriage and slept. I ate the food you prepared, so I want to share what I have too. But they won't take it. Please help me?" Uncle Bai looked down at her, small, delicate, yet with such a sincere, kind heart that wanted to treat everyone equally. He felt a warm feeling spread through his chest. He sighed, but it was a sigh of pure affection and admiration. He smiled, reached out, and took a big sweet bun and a handful of nuts from her hands. All right. I understand. You are a thoughtful child, Fengyu." He then raised his voice, speaking loudly to all the men gathered around the fire. "Listen up, everyone. Little Miss Shin here bought these snacks herself and insists on sharing them with all of you as thanks for your hard work. She won't feel at ease if you refuse. Take them. Don't be shy and don't treat her like a stranger. If she offers, you accept it gratefully. That is an order from me." Hearing their leader speak and seeing the girl's hopeful expression, the servants and guards finally stopped hesitating. They came over one by one, smiling broadly, and took a portion of the treats, bowing and thanking her repeatedly. "Thank you very much, little Miss Shin. These smell wonderful. Thank you for sharing. You are too kind, miss." Fengyu beamed happily, her eyes crinkling into crescents. She loved the feeling of being part of a group, of being able to give instead of just receiving. After making sure everyone had a share, she picked up her empty bowl again and looked around. She spotted a bucket of water and a cloth near the edge of the camp. She turned to the nearest servant. "Excuse me, where can I wash this? I will clean it and put it away properly." Before she could even take a step, a young servant boy rushed over quickly and gently took the bowl from her hands. No, little miss. Please, let me do it. You are our guest. How could we let you wash dishes? You just sit near the fire and keep warm. Leave these things to us." Fengyu blinked, then nodded gratefully, stepping back. As the servant hurried away to clean the utensils, the others watching nodded silently to themselves. What a sensible child, they thought. She doesn't act high and mighty even though she dresses well. She knows how to be grateful and wants to help. She is truly well raised. Uncle Bai watched everything from his place by the fire, stroking his beard thoughtfully. He compared Fengyu's behavior, her politeness, her gratitude, her thoughtfulness, and her willingness to share with his own children back home in Lianxi City. His sons and daughters were good kids, yes, but they were used to comfort and wealth. They mostly knew how to spend money and demand things, rarely thinking about the hardships of others or showing such genuine consideration for servants and guards. He sighed softly, a mix of pride for Fengyu and disappointment in his own kin. If only my children had half her sensibility and grace, he mused. This child. She is truly extraordinary. She carries herself like a lady of the highest breed, yet her heart is humble and kind. She is going to go far in this world. Fengyu didn't know she had become the subject of such high praise. She walked back to the warm glow of the bonfire, sitting comfortably among the men as if she belonged there. She started talking to them naturally, her voice clear and friendly. "Hello everyone. My name is Shin Fengyu. I am 12 years old. It is very nice to travel with all of you. Thank you for taking care of me so far." One of the older guards, a man with a scar across his eyebrow and a kind smile, leaned forward slightly, resting his spear against a log. He looked at her with curiosity. "Little Miss Fengyu, let me ask you something. We are all big, rough men, strangers you met just today. We are traveling through wild lands, far from any city or house. Aren't you afraid? You are a young girl, after all. Most children would be crying or clinging to an adult by now. The atmosphere quieted down a little as everyone waited for her answer. They were genuinely curious why she seemed so fearless. Fengyu smiled, a bright and confident smile that made her look even more charming. She shook her head firmly. Afraid? Why would I be afraid? She glanced toward Uncle Bai, then back to the guards. Uncle Bai is a good man. I can tell just by looking at his face and how he treats people. And all of you. You work hard, you protect the goods, you follow orders well. You all have honest eyes. I know you are good people. Besides, her eyes sparkled with sincerity and a touch of flattery that came naturally to her. You are all so tall and strong, and you carry weapons and know how to fight. If anything bad happens, you will protect me, right? I feel much safer being surrounded by strong uncles and big brothers than I would be alone in a big empty house. The men burst into hearty laughter, their chests puffing out with pride at her words. All their previous reservations vanished instantly. They realized that despite her fine clothes, elegant manners, and obvious intelligence, she was not arrogant, haughty, or spoiled in the slightest. She treated them with respect, spoke to them kindly, and trusted them completely. Good lass. You have good eyes. Don't you worry, miss. With us here, not even a wolf or a thief will come near you. Anyone who wants to hurt you will have to go through us first. Fengyu clapped her hands happily, delighted to have won them over so easily. She then started asking them questions one by one, turning the atmosphere light and cheerful. Big brother guard, what is your name? How long have you been doing this work? Is it very hard? And you, uncle, do you have children? Are they older or younger than me? Have any of you ever seen a real bandit? What do they look like? She listened attentively to every answer, reacting with surprise, admiration, or amusement, making every man feel important and heard. Under the starry sky, beside the warm crackling fire, the journey that began with uncertainty had turned into something much warmer. Shin Fengyu had not just joined a caravan, she had already woven herself right into the heart of the group. The first rays of dawn were just painting the horizon in soft shades of pink and gold when Fengyu opened her eyes. She felt incredibly refreshed, her body light and free of the heavy soreness she expected. Sleeping alone in the carriage had been far more comfortable than the previous night, and definitely 1,000 times better than the cold, damp basement of the orphanage. She stretched her arms high above her head, twisting her waist and kicking out her legs, feeling every muscle wake up and hum with energy. Sitting up, she reached into her bag and took out the rough cotton towel and the block of herbal soap she had bought. A full bath would be too troublesome and too cold this early morning, she thought, but a good wash for the face, hands, and mouth will make everything feel fresh. She left her heavier belongings and silver safely tucked inside the carriage. After yesterday, seeing how respectful and protective everyone was, she was certain no one here would dare or want to steal from her. Besides, even if someone tried, she was confident she could take it back easily. She hopped down from the carriage, landing softly on the grass. The camp was already alive with activity. Servants were striking fires, packing up the mats and blankets, and leading the horses to get water. The smell of burning wood and brewing tea filled the crisp morning air. Uncle Bai was standing near the center, checking the loads on the carriages, when he saw her walking toward the edge of the camp with her towel slung over one arm and soap in the other. His face broke into a warm smile. "Good morning, Uncle Bai." Fengyu called out cheerfully as she approached, her voice clear and bright like a bell. Uncle Bai paused, blinking rapidly. He scratched his head, looking puzzled and amused. "Good morning? Little Fengyu, what does that mean? Is it a saying from where you grew up? Yesterday you mentioned something similar, breakfast and lunch, and we were all wondering what words you were using." Fengyu froze for a split second, mentally slapping her forehead. Right. I keep slipping back into modern terms and phrases from my old world. These people have never heard such things. She quickly composed herself and gave him a bright, innocent smile, improvising smoothly. "Oh, that? It is just a special greeting from the village I lived in. It means, the morning is good and I wish you well. It is what we say when we see someone after waking up." Uncle Bai laughed heartily, liking the sound of it very much. "The morning is good and I wish you well. Ha ha, very nice, very poetic. Then I shall say it too, good morning to you as well, little one." It sounds very fitting for such a fresh day. Fengyu let out a quiet breath of relief. "I am going to the stream nearby to wash up a bit, Uncle. The air is so nice, I want to enjoy it." "Go ahead," Uncle Bai nodded, but his expression turned a little more serious. "But do not go too far and stay alert. This is wild terrain. There are wolves, wild boars, and other creatures roaming about at this hour. Be careful." "I will. Thank you." She waved her hand and walked happily toward the gurgling sound of water just beyond the tree line. When she reached the stream, the water sparkled like liquid crystal under the rising sun. It was clear, cold, and inviting. She found a flat, smooth rock to place her soap and towel, then she cupped her hands and let the cool water run over her skin. It felt amazing, washing away the last traces of sleep and dust. She rubbed the fragrant soap between her palms until it foamed, then washed her face thoroughly, scrubbed her hands and arms, and even cupped water to rinse her mouth and gargle, enjoying the clean, slightly sweet aftertaste of fresh spring water. Once she was clean and refreshed, she wiped her face and hands dry with her towel. She looked around and found a large, broad green leaf growing by the bank. She carefully wrapped her damp soap inside it to keep it safe and dry, tucking it beside the rock. Instead of heading straight back, she stood there for a moment, breathing deeply of the crisp, pine-scented air. She looked up at the sky, watching as the sun finally peeked over the tops of the distant mountains, casting golden light over the green fields and forests. It was beautiful, pristine, and untouched. She decided to take a short walk, exploring the area a little bit. She wanted to stretch her legs, and secretly, she hoped to find something edible. She wandered slowly along the bank, her eyes scanning the bushes and wild plants. "If there are wild vegetables or fruits, I can pick them and add to our meal," she thought happily. She walked further and further away from the camp, deeper into the trees, until suddenly, her eyes lit up. Among the green leaves, clusters of bright, glossy red beads were hanging heavily from low bushes. Wild berries. She hurried over and smiled broadly. She plucked one small, round berry, inspected it closely to make sure it wasn't poisonous. Her knowledge from books and survival shows in her past life helped here, sniffed its sweet, tart aroma, and then popped it straight into her mouth. Crunch. The flavor exploded across her tongue, perfect balance of sharp sourness and rich sweetness, juicy and refreshing. "Delicious," she whispered to herself. There were so many bushes here, heavy with fruit. It was like finding a hidden treasure. She quickly folded another large leaf into a cone shape, using a small twig to pin the bottom so it acted like a basket. She began picking rapidly, filling her leaf basket while popping a few extra berries into her mouth every now and then. She was enjoying herself immensely, humming softly under her breath. The sound was sharp and loud, the distinct noise of a dry branch breaking under heavy weight. Fengyu froze instantly. Her hand hovered over a bunch of berries. She tilted her head, listening intently. The noises grew louder, heavier, and closer. It sounded like something big, heavy, and clumsy was moving through the undergrowth, smashing plants as it went. The bushes just 20 paces away shook violently. Fengyu carefully set down her leaf basket of berries and her wrapped soap on the grass. She didn't panic. Instead, with a casual movement, she draped her damp towel over her shoulder, just like how chefs or cooks in old movies wore their towels, hanging loose, hands relaxed at her sides. She moved silently, stepping lightly without making a sound, and peered through the leaves. Her eyes widened in surprise and excitement. There, rooting around in the dirt and eating fallen acorns and roots, was a wild boar. It was massive. easily bigger than her small 12-year-old frame, with coarse, dark gray-black fur, sharp tusks curling up from its jaw, and a body that looked as hard and solid as a rock. It grunted loudly, its powerful legs trampling the ground. Feng Yu's heart raced. Not from fear, but from pure thrill. This is my first time seeing a real wild boar. In 2 lifetimes. Her gaze traveled over its thick body, and immediately, her thoughts turned to food. Look at that size, so much meat. The skin is thick, good for leather. The bones, excellent for soup. And wild boar meat is leaner, tastier than domestic pork. Braised, roasted, made into sausages. Oh, Uncle Bai and the guards would be so happy to have fresh meat tonight. She licked her lips. She didn't see a dangerous beast, she saw a walking pile of ingredients. The boar suddenly lifted its head, its small, beady eyes catching movement. It spotted the small girl standing calmly just a few meters away. Instead of hiding or running, Feng Yu stepped out from behind the bushes completely. She stood straight, hands loose, towel still slung over her shoulder, looking at the massive animal as if it were just a stray dog or a chicken. Her sudden appearance startled the boar. It let out a high-pitched, angry squeal, stomping its front hooves aggressively. To the animal, this small, strange-looking creature was either a threat or prey. It didn't hesitate. With a thunderous roar, it lowered its head, aiming its sharp tusks forward, and charged at her with terrifying speed and weight, shaking the earth with every step. It thinks I am the meal, Feng Yu thought amusedly, her eyes sparkling. Little does it know, the roles are reversed. She didn't run. She didn't step aside. She stood her ground, calm and composed, her breathing steady. She watched the boar come closer and closer, a charging mass of muscle, fat, and fury. Am I strong enough? Can my skinny little fist break its thick skull? She wondered for a split second. Only one way to find out. Just as the boar was within striking distance, ready to ram her and toss her into the air, Feng Yu shifted her weight. She tightened her small fist, channeling that strange, overwhelming power that seemed to flow effortlessly through her veins. She punched straight forward, right into the center of the boar's forehead. The impact was heavy and solid. Her hand didn't hurt at all. It felt like hitting a thick sandbag. The boar, however, stumbled backward, its entire body jerking from the force. It shook its head wildly, looking incredibly confused, as if wondering why crashing into this tiny girl felt like crashing into a mountain. It squealed in pain and rage, dizzy but not yet defeated. It pawed the ground again, preparing for a second, more furious charge. Not done yet? All right then, Feng Yu muttered. This time, as the boar rushed her again, she didn't use just one hand. She stepped into the attack, moving faster than the beast could track. She unleashed a flurry of blows. Both fists striking out rapidly, accurately targeting the sensitive spots, the head, the neck, the area just behind the ears. She hit with precision and terrifying strength, each punch carrying enough force to crack stone. The boar tried to turn, tried to bite, tried to gore her with its tusks, but every movement was met with a heavy blow that knocked it off balance. It was like a heavy boulder crashing against an immovable wall. With every second, the animal grew more stunned, more disoriented, until finally, thump. With a final, dull sound, the massive wild boar's legs buckled underneath it. Its body swayed once, twice, and then it collapsed heavily onto the grass, rolling onto its side. It let out one last, long wheezing breath and then, silence. It lay perfectly still. Feng Yu stood over it, taking a few light breaths to steady herself, wiping her hands together casually. She reached out and poked the boar's side. It was hard as rock, but completely unresponsive. She bent down to check its nose. No warm air came out. Its eyes were glazed over. Dead, she stated simply, a satisfied grin spreading across her face. Looks like the shock to its brain and those punches scrambled its wits right out of its head. Perfect. She looked at the massive carcass, then back toward the direction of the camp. She imagined the faces of Uncle Bai and the guards when they saw what she had brought back. She looked at the massive boar and her things on the ground. Then she took her towel off her shoulder and tied the ends, and went to pick her berries and soap and put them in the towel. Then she untied her sash from her waist and inserted the sash through the tied towel and tied them back to her waist. After that, she reached down, grabbed one of the boar's thick, heavy hind legs, and easily hoisted the creature up onto her shoulders, just like she was carrying a sack of feathers. She then turned back toward the path and began walking back to camp with a steady, unhurried pace, humming her little tune again. Good morning indeed, she thought happily. Today's meal is going to be very special. Fomu was still humming softly under her breath, her shoulders carrying the massive wild boar easily when the faint sounds of shouting and raised voices drifted through the trees. At first, she thought it was just the men talking loudly as usual, but as she drew closer to the clearing, the tone changed sharper, angrier, filled with menace. Her happy expression faded instantly, replaced by a frown. A cold, uneasy feeling prickled in her chest. Something is wrong. She picked up her pace, walking briskly until the trees thinned out and she could clearly see the campground. What she saw made her eyes narrow sharply. There, right in the middle of their resting place, stood two groups facing each other in a tense standoff. On one side were Uncle Bai, the servants, and the guards of the caravan. They had all drawn their weapons, swords, spears, and heavy staves, and stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a defensive line. Their faces grim and tense, eyes hard with determination. Opposite them is a group of roughly 20 men, dressed in tattered, dirty clothes, with unkempt hair and wild, cruel expressions. Some are bulky and muscular, their arms thick with scars, while others are lean and vicious. They carried an assortment of weapons, rusted swords, heavy axes, wooden clubs, and even sharpened pitchforks. Their leader, a big man with a scar running down his cheek and a massive iron mace resting on his shoulder, stood at the front, sneering arrogantly. "So listen well, you old fool," the scarred man shouted, his voice rough like grinding stones. "We are the Black Tiger Gang. We know you merchants carry gold, silver, and fine goods. Hand over everything, every coin, every roll of silk, every bit of food, and we might let you live to walk away with your skins intact. If you dare to resist, don't blame us for being cruel." Uncle Bai stood tall at the front of his men, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword tightly. His face was stern and unyielding, not a trace of fear in his eyes. He spoke loud and clear, his voice ringing across the clearing. "You dare threaten us? We travel these roads fairly and pay the proper tolls. We have done nothing to you. We will not hand over our hard-earned goods, and we certainly do not fear the likes of you. Step aside, or you will regret ever crossing paths with Merchant Bai." "Huh? Regret? We will make you regret." The bandit leader laughed darkly, waving his hand forward. "Men, teach these stubborn idiots a lesson. Break their bones and take everything." The rough group of bandits grinned viciously, stepping closer, raising their weapons, ready to charge and overwhelm the caravan guards with their numbers. Tension was so thick in the air it felt like it could be cut with a knife. "Look here." A clear, bright voice suddenly rang out from the side, loud and cheerful, cutting right through the angry shouts. Everyone froze. Every single head, bandits, guards, servants, Uncle Bai, turned simultaneously toward the sound. They all stopped what they were doing, confused and startled. What they saw made their brains short-circuit completely. Time seemed to slow down. The heavy carcass soared through the air, legs flailing, ears flopping, creating a strange, whistling sound as it cut through the wind. It flew in a perfect arc, right on target, heading straight for the thickest cluster of bandits who were packed closely together, ready to rush forward. The bandits' eyes widened to the size of saucers. Their jaws dropped open. They saw a large, dark shape flying toward them, but their brains simply refused to process what exactly it was. Thud. Crash. Bam. It was like watching a game of bowling, except the ball was a full-grown wild boar, and the pins were 20 grown men. The heavy body slammed right into the front line of bandits with the force of a falling boulder. The impact was deafening. The first 3 men didn't even have time to scream before they were knocked flat, flying backward into their own comrades behind them. One by one, like dominoes or a row of bowling pins, the bandits were struck, tripped, and crashed into each other, falling over in a chaotic heap of limbs, weapons, and bodies. Groans, shouts, and cries of pain erupted as half the gang ended up sprawled on the ground, dazed, winded, and completely confused, buried under the weight of their own men and the dead boar. Silence returned instantly. Absolute, total silence. Uncle Bai and his guards stood frozen, weapons still raised but forgotten, their mouths hanging open so wide they could probably fit an egg inside. Their eyes were glued to the scene of destruction in front of them, their minds completely blank. Fengyu walked out from the trees, stepping over a small branch, completely unbothered. She looked at the pile of groaning bandits, then threw her head back and laughed heartily, a clear, bell-like sound that echoed around the clearing. She raised her small fist and punched the air triumphantly upward, grinning from ear to ear. One shot. Perfect aim. Still, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The birds in the trees seemed to stop chirping. The bandit leader, who had miraculously avoided the direct hit but was knocked down by his own flying men, slowly sat up from the dirt. He rubbed his aching head, looking at the massive boar lying on top of his crew, then looked at the small girl standing a few meters away. He blinked hard. He rubbed his eyes. He looked again. Is that a boar?" he stammered, his voice trembling. Did that little girl just throw a boar at us?" One of his men, groaning beneath the animal's heavy body, wheezed out, "Big brother, I think. I think I got hit by a pig. Not just a pig, a flying pig." Another whimpered, clutching his ribs. It came, flying, from the sky. Uncle Bai stood there, his sword hand slowly lowering until the tip touched the ground. He looked at Fengyu, then at the boar, then back at Fengyu. He looked like he was having a hard time believing reality. "She throws a wild boar like a stone." He pinched his own arm hard. "Ouch! It hurts." "So I am not dreaming." The guards, tough men who had faced bandits and beasts without flinching, exchanged glances with expressions of pure bewilderment and awe. "What kind of experience is this?" They all thought in unison. "We came here prepared to fight and bleed." And the problem got solved because a little girl went for a morning walk and decided to use a wild boar as a projectile weapon. Is this real life? Is this how battles are won now? One young servant boy whispered to the man next to him, "Did you see that? It flew so far, like it was a feather." "I saw it. I saw it." The other replied shakily. "But I don't believe it. I don't think I will ever believe anything again." Fengyu walked closer, stepping next to the pile of fallen bandits, looking down at them with her hands on her hips and a bright, innocent smile that looked terrifying to everyone watching. "Good morning, uncles," she chirped cheerfully. "Oh dear, you all fell down? Are you all right?" "I was just bringing meat, but it seems it landed on you instead." "My bad." The bandits scrambled backward on their hands and knees, terrified, crawling away from her and the boar as fast as they could. The scarred leader, pale as a sheet of paper, scrambled up, pointing a shaking finger at her. You monster." He stuttered, fear taking over completely. Who throws a boar? That's not normal. That's not how people fight." Fengyu tilted her head, looking confused and adorable. "Huh? But it worked, didn't it? You all went down very nicely. Like, thud. Just like that." She clapped her hands together lightly to demonstrate. The sight of this small, sweet-looking girl talking about knocking down 20 grown men with a flying boar as if it were the most normal thing in the world was enough to shatter every bit of courage the bandits had left. "Run! Run away!" the leader screamed, turning tail and sprinting toward the trees as fast as his legs could carry him. "This isn't a caravan. This is a den of demons. That girl is a devil. Get away before she throws a boulder or a horse next." The rest of the bandits didn't need to be told twice. With shouts of fear and panic, they scrambled up, abandoning their weapons, their plans, and even their dignity, tripping over each other in their desperate rush to escape. Within seconds, the clearing was empty except for the dust they left behind, the groaning sounds fading into the distance. Fengyu watched them go, shrugging her shoulders casually. They left so quickly. I wanted to ask if they wanted some berries too. She turned around to face Uncle Bai and the rest of the caravan, who were still standing exactly where they were, frozen like statues, staring at her with wide, disbelieving eyes. She beamed at them, holding up her leaf basket of red berries proudly. Look, everyone. I found wild berries and caught a huge boar. We have fresh meat for dinner tonight. Isn't that wonderful? She pointed at the massive boar carcass lying in the middle of the camp, which had just single-handedly defeated an entire gang of robbers. So, who is going to help me drag it? It's heavy. She paused, then giggled mischievously. Well, not that heavy, but it's better if we do it together. Uncle Bai finally snapped out of his shock. He looked at the boar, then at his men, then at Fengyu. He let out a long, deep breath, shaking his head slowly as a mix of laughter and disbelief bubbled up inside him. He walked over, patted her gently on the head, and sighed with profound emotion. Little Fengyu, he said, his voice full of wonder, I have traveled these roads for 30 years. I have seen wars, fights, storms, and disasters, but never in my life have I seen a bandit gang defeated by a flying boar. He looked at his guards, who were finally beginning to laugh nervously and relax, shaking their heads in amusement and relief. Fengyu just grinned, popping a sweet red berry into her mouth and chewing happily. This journey is getting better and better, she thought. And honestly, throwing a boar was way more fun than just punching them. After the dust settled and the last echoes of the bandits' panicked footsteps faded into the forest, the men finally gathered around the massive carcass. Even though they had witnessed the unbelievable way it arrived, their instincts as travelers and workers kicked in immediately. 4 of the strongest guards stepped forward, heaving the heavy body up with effort, marveling again at how this small girl had carried and thrown it so effortlessly. They dragged it to a clean spot near the stream, where they set to work with practiced hands. Sharp knives glinted in the growing sunlight. They skinned the boar carefully, keeping the thick, durable hide intact. It would make excellent leather or a warm blanket later. Then they sliced through the layers of muscle and fat, chopping the huge animal into manageable portions, washing every piece thoroughly in the running water to remove blood and dirt. The fresh, rich scent of wild meat began to fill the air, mixing with the green smell of the forest. Since their morning meal had been interrupted by the arrival of the Black Tiger Gang, they decided to celebrate their safety and good fortune immediately. They skewered large chunks of tender meat and fat, setting them over glowing embers to grill. Soon, the delicious aroma of roasting pork, salt, and wild herbs wafted through the camp, making everyone's stomach growl with delight. The servants and guards were grinning from ear to ear, chatting happily as they worked. Not only had they escaped danger without a single scratch or loss of goods, but they had also gained enough high-quality meat to feed the entire group for the next 3 or 4 days. It was like a massive victory feast, and they all knew exactly whom to thank. They kept glancing over at Fengyu with looks of pure awe and affection, whispering to each other about how she was their lucky star and their secret weapon all rolled into one. While the men busied themselves with the preparations, Uncle Bai pulled Fengyu aside to a quieter spot near the carriage. His expression, usually warm and smiling, was now stern and filled with worry. He crossed his arms over his chest and looked down at her seriously. Fengyu, he began, his voice firm but trembling slightly with emotion. I know you're strong, stronger than any man I have ever known, strong enough to make gods tremble, it seems. But listen to me carefully. What you did today was far too reckless. You went off alone into the woods, and even if you possess the strength of a warrior, you are still a young girl, barely 12 years old. What if there had been more than one boar? What if you had tripped, or something unexpected happened? You cannot just throw yourself into danger like that every time. Do you know how terrified I was when I realized you were gone, and then when I saw you walking back carrying that beast? My heart nearly stopped beating. You must never be so careless again. Do you understand? Fengyu stood before him, her head bowed low, her shoulders slightly hunched as if she were deeply saddened and regretful. She looked exactly like a scolded child, her hair falling forward to hide her expression. I understand, Uncle Bai. I was wrong. I didn't mean to make you worry. She mumbled softly, her voice small and meek. She stayed silent for a moment longer, letting him finish his lecture, before she slowly lifted her face, her eyes wide and earnest. Really, Uncle, it just happened so suddenly. I saw the berries, then I heard the noise, and before I knew it, I had already done it. But look, I am completely fine. Not a single scratch, not even a bruise. I promise you, nothing happened to me, and I will be more careful next time, okay? To prove her point, she confidently lifted her left arm, pulling back the wide sleeve to show him her smooth, unhurt skin. See? Perfectly. Her words cut off abruptly. Uncle Bai's eyes, however, had already fallen onto her arm, and his expression instantly hardened into something dark and pained. There, revealed by the lifted sleeve, was skin that was far from perfect. Running along the back of her forearm, stretching from her wrist almost to her elbow, was a map of injuries. There were old, silvery white scars, thin lines, thick marks, circular burns, and rough patches, proof of wounds that had healed long ago. But mixed right in with them were newer marks, dark purple and blue bruises, some fresh red abrasions, and swollen areas that looked tender to the touch. They were not the kind of injuries one would get from wrestling a wild boar or falling down. These were marks left by thin sticks, coarse ropes, heavy hands, and harsh tools, injuries inflicted by people. Fengyu froze, her eyes widening as she saw them too. Her thoughts were full of things, and that maybe even her pain tolerance is high, so she didn't notice while bathing yesterday. She had been so focused on her escape and the journey that she had completely forgotten about the old wounds Wei Lan had carried, and the new ones she had gotten during the struggle at the orphanage just yesterday. She hadn't noticed them earlier as well as her mind is at peace. Panic flashed in her eyes for a split second. She quickly yanked her arm back, pulling the sleeve down fast to cover the skin again, and lowered her head even further, her body tense and guarded. She hugged her own arm tightly as if trying to hide it from the world. Uncle Bai stood very still. He didn't reach out, he didn't move, but his gaze was heavy and intense, fixed on her small, trembling form. His heart ached painfully in his chest. Seeing the physical evidence of how badly she had been treated struck him harder than any sword blow. Fengyu, he said softly, his voice rough. Tell me, what happened? Where did those come from? Those marks, they aren't from accidents. They aren't from fighting animals or falling down. Those are from being beaten, aren't they? Fengyu remained silent. She stared at the tip of her shoes, her lips pressed tight together. She couldn't tell him. She couldn't explain about the orphanage, about Auntie Ma, about Madame Lu, or the years of suffering Wei Lan endured. She already has a plan for them, but she couldn't tell them just yet. After a long pause, she whispered in a voice barely louder than the wind, I cannot tell you, Uncle Bai. Please, don't ask me about it. Just let it be. Uncle Bai let out a long, heavy sigh. He wanted to push. He wanted to demand the truth so he could help her, but looking at the deep pain and the walls she had built around herself, he knew it was useless for now. Whatever she had gone through, it was buried deep, and she wasn't ready to speak of it. All right, he said gently, reaching out to pat the top of her head softly, careful not to hurt her. I won't ask. You don't have to say anything. Just remember that you are safe now. You are with me with us. No one will ever be allowed to hurt you like that again. Never. Go sit by the carriage and rest for a while. Wash up if you need to. The food will be ready very soon, and it will be delicious. Fengyu nodded gratefully, leaning slightly into his touch. But then she wrinkled her nose, sniffing at her own clothes and hair. Uncle, actually, before we eat, can I go wash my hair? She asked, looking up at him with pleading eyes again. I carried that heavy boar on my shoulders, and its fur and smell got all over me and my hair. It's really sticky and smells terrible. I won't be able to eat properly if I stay like this. Please? I promise I won't go far. I'll stay right in the bend of the stream where you can see me clearly the whole time. And I'll come back the second I'm done. I won't wander off again, I swear. Uncle Bai looked at her pleading face, then glanced at the cooking meat, then back at the stream nearby, which was wide open and visible from the camp. He let out another sigh, shaking his head helplessly, though a small smile tugged at his lips. You are really too much trouble, child, he said, though there was no real scolding in his tone anymore. Fine, fine. Go wash yourself. But listen closely, you stay within arm's reach of the bank. Do not step deeper into the water, do not go further downstream, and do not disappear behind the trees. We will be watching you every second. As soon as you are clean, you come straight back. Do you hear me? I hear you. Loud and clear. Fengyu beamed, her mood instantly brightening again. She grabbed her towel and soap, already turning toward the sparkling water. I'll be fast. I'll be sparkling clean in no time. And Fengyu, Uncle Bai called out one last time as she walked away. She turned back, yes. He looked at her meaningfully, his voice soft but firm. And cover your arms properly while you are out there. Don't let anyone else see what I saw. You never know who might look at it the wrong way. Fengyu paused, then nodded slowly, pulling her sleeves tight around her wrists. I know. Thank you, Uncle Bai. She hurried off toward the water's edge, while Uncle Bai stood watching her go, his heart heavy with thoughts. After she finished washing and changing into her fresh blue hanfu, Fengyu hurried back to join everyone for the meal. The grilled wild boar meat was rich, savory, and perfectly seasoned, easily the best food they had eaten on the road. Everyone ate heartily, their spirits high after the morning's excitement and the delicious feast. Once everything was packed away and the camp cleared, the caravan set off again, wheels rolling steadily toward Lianxi City under the bright sun. Inside the carriage, Fengyu sat comfortably, her mind already racing with new ideas. She leaned forward slightly toward Uncle Bai, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. Uncle Bai, I have something important I want to discuss with you, she began earnestly. I have a proposal for a business partnership with you. I know you trade silk and fine fabrics, right? Well, I want to design clothes, new styles that no one in this era has ever seen before. I can draw the patterns and designs, explain exactly how they should be made, and you would handle getting the materials, hiring the tailors, and selling them. We can split the profits. You take 70% for managing everything, and I will be happy with just 30% for the ideas. What do you think? Uncle Bai listened carefully, but as she spoke, his expression turned slightly confused, his brows knitting together. Words like partnership, design, and percent were unfamiliar concepts to him, sounding strange and abstract. He scratched his head, looking perplexed. Little one. I follow most of it, but some of these words, partnership? Percent? I don't quite grasp what you mean. You want to draw pictures of clothes and then split the silver? How exactly? Fengyu instantly realized she had slipped back into modern terms again. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand, suppressing a giggle at her own mistake. Oops. I keep forgetting they don't speak like this here, she thought. She cleared her throat and started over, using simple, plain language he would understand perfectly. I am sorry, Uncle. Let me explain it more simply. What I mean is, I know how to make new kinds of clothing, styles that are more beautiful, more comfortable, and better suited for different people and occasions. I can draw exactly what they look like and tell you how to sew them. You have the silk, the money, and the shops. You find the workers to make them and sell them. We share the earnings fairly. You keep the bigger part because you do the work, and I take a small share just for thinking up the ideas. It will be something unique only we have, so people will surely buy a lot. Understanding slowly dawned on Uncle Bai's face, followed immediately by surprise and keen interest. He nodded slowly, stroking his beard as the idea settled in. Now I understand completely. You mean you create new styles, and I produce and sell them, exclusive goods that no other merchant has. That is actually a brilliant thought. New fashions always sell well, especially if they are fine and unique. Feng Yu beamed, happy you got it now. Exactly. When we stop to rest for the night, I will take out paper and brush and draw everything for you. I'll show you the designs and explain exactly what makes them special, how they fit, and who they are meant for. Once you see them, I'm sure you'll agree they will be very popular and profitable. Uncle Bai looked at her with renewed respect and amazement. He had already seen her strength, her courage, and her kindness. Now he was discovering she also possessed a sharp, clever mind for business. He nodded firmly, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Very well. I look forward to it greatly, Feng Yu. Tonight, you shall show me what is in that clever head of yours. If your designs are as good as your ideas, I have a feeling this journey will mark the beginning of something big for both of us. As soon as the caravan halted for the night and the camp was set up, Feng Yu didn't waste a single moment. Inside the carriage, by the light of a small oil lamp, she spread out the paper and ink brush she had asked. Her mind was filled with images from her past life, clothes that were practical, comfortable, yet stylish. But as she began to draw, her hand paused often, thinking carefully. She knew very well that this was an ancient world with strict customs and conservative views. If she drew something too revealing or too strange, it would be rejected immediately or even cause offense. So she adapted everything. When she sketched t-shirts and tank tops, she made sure they had modest necklines, nothing too low or tight, cut from soft, breathable silk or fine cotton, designed to be worn as inner layers or casual daily wear. For the one-piece dresses, she lengthened the hems to flow down to the ankles and added wide, elegant sleeves or subtle overlaps that retained the grace of Hanfu but simplified the structure, making them easier to put on and move in. For the pants, she drew loose, straight-cut styles, nothing tight or form-fitting, wide around the hips and legs, comfortable enough for travel or work, but tailored to look neat and proper, different from the baggy trousers common for laborers. The jackets were designed with simple buttons or ties, shorter in length, easy to take on and off, perfect for changing weather. And the sweaters, she drew them as soft, knitted-style tops with high collars or open fronts, explaining that they were made from specially treated thread to keep warmth without the bulk of heavy robes. Every design was adjusted to fit the standards of this era. Modest, dignified, and elegant, while still bringing the revolutionary concepts of simplicity, comfort, and functionality. She added notes beside each drawing, writing clearly about the materials to use, the measurements, and how they should fit the body, not too tight, not too loose. After they finished their evening meal and the camp had quieted down, Feng Yu sat beside Uncle Bai near the fire, spreading her stack of drawings out on a clean flat rock. The firelight danced over the paper, illuminating the clear lines and details she had drawn. Uncle Bai, look here, she said softly but excitedly, pointing to the first sketch. These are the new styles I was telling you about. This first one is called a tunic or shirt. It is simple, has wide sleeves or no sleeves for when the weather is hot, and is made from thin, light fabric. It is perfect for wearing under outer robes or just by itself during chores or travel. It dries fast and is very easy to wash and sew. She moved to the next one. This is a dress. It is one whole piece, so you don't have to wrap layers or tie so many sashes. It covers everything properly, reaches the ankles, and is very dignified, but you can move freely, run, or work without tripping over hems. For men or stronger activities, these are loose pants, see? They are straight and roomy, so the legs aren't restricted, but they look neat and respectable, not like rough workers' clothes. She continued explaining the jackets and warm sweaters, describing how the shorter length made them practical for riding or walking, and how the soft, warm fabrics would be a treasure during cold winters or mountain travel. She explained how every design could be decorated with embroidery, patterns, or different colors to suit rich nobles or common folk, and how they came in different sizes, small, medium, large, and extra large. To fit children, slender people, sturdy adults, or anyone in between. Uncle Bai leaned forward, stroking his beard slowly as he studied every single drawing carefully. At first, his expression was curious, but as he looked longer, his brows furrowed slightly, and he nodded slowly, though doubt was clear in his eyes. He picked up the drawing of the dress, turning it side to side. Little Fengyu, these drawings are very clear, and the ideas, they are very different from what we have now, he admitted honestly. We have robes, we have tunics, we have skirts and pants, but none are made this way. To make a dress all in one piece? Pants that are straight but not baggy? Tops without layered colors. It is also unusual. I can see they look comfortable, yes, and they cover everything properly so there is no shame or offense, but people here are used to tradition. They like things done the way they have always been done. Will anyone actually want to wear these? Will the wealthy ladies or merchants agree to buy something so new and untested? He looked up at her, his eyes searching. You say these are better, easier, warmer, or cooler, but how can I be sure? If I spend silver on materials and pay tailors to make them, and then no one buys them, I will lose a lot of money, little one. I trust your mind, truly I do, but this is a big risk. These things are so new, almost strange to our eyes. Fengyu smiled confidently, not at all discouraged by his skepticism. She had expected exactly this reaction. She reached out and tapped the drawings lightly. Uncle Bai, I knew you would ask that. And you are right, change is scary, and people love what they know. But think about it, people also love comfort, and they love things that make their lives easier. Right now, clothes are heavy, have many layers, are hard to wash, hard to move in, or too hot or too cold. These designs solve all those problems and still follow all the rules of decency and beauty you have here. Look, no skin is showing, no improper shapes are revealed. Everything is as modest as a formal robe, just simpler and better. She leaned closer, her eyes sparkling with certainty. And you don't have to guess if they work or look good. Here is my promise to you. Once we get to Lianxi City, you just need to find a few skilled tailors and give them good fabric. Make only a few pieces first, samples, small ones. Make them exactly according to my measurements and notes, in different sizes for different bodies. And as soon as they are finished, I will wear them myself. She pointed to the sketches again. I will wear each style, from the lightest summer top to the warmest winter sweater. I will walk around, travel, work, and sit in them so everyone can see clearly how beautiful they look, how elegant they are, how comfortable they make movement, and how well they suit anyone whether they are thin or plump, tall or short. Once people see that these clothes are not only proper, but actually look better and are easier to live in, believe me, uncle, they won't just want to buy them. They will be begging you to sell them. Uncle Bai looked at her determined face, then back at the drawings. Slowly, the skepticism in his eyes melted away, replaced by growing excitement and admiration. He realized she wasn't just dreaming. She had thought of every detail, custom sizes for every body type, modesty to fit the culture, practical use for every season, and even a plan to demonstrate their value. He let out a hearty laugh, rolling up the drawings carefully and tucking them safely against his chest. All right. You have convinced me, Fengyu. New or not, strange or not, if you are willing to be the first to wear them and show the world how good they are, then I am willing to take the risk. We will make these samples. We will see them made real. And if they are even half as good as you describe, then it would sell well. Fengyu beamed, her heart swelling with joy. Night had fully descended over the forest camp, and silence reigned, save for the soft crackle of dying embers and the rhythmic breathing of sleeping men. Fengyu lay comfortably on her mat inside the carriage, wrapped in a warm blanket, sleeping soundly and peacefully, her mind free of worries or past burdens. But hundreds of li away, back within the high gray walls of Qingyun City's Compassion Orphanage, the atmosphere was anything but calm or peaceful. It was filled with rage, pain, and panic as two of the most powerful people in the compound lay bedridden and helpless, their suffering a direct result of the girl they now cursed with every breath. Inside the largest room at the main hall, Director Lulay sprawled across her large, soft bed, her usually proud and stern face now a mess of bruises and swelling. The back and side of her head had swollen into a large, hard lump the size of a fist, purple and tender to the touch. Every time she tried to move, even just to turn her head, sharp, throbbing pain shot through her skull, making her vision blur and nausea rise in her throat. She had woken up only yesterday, hours after the incident, groggy and confused, but as soon as her memory returned, so did her fury. She had been screaming, shouting, and cursing nonstop since waking up, her voice hoarse and raspy, frightening every servant and child who dared to pass by her door. In a smaller room not far away, Auntie Ma lay in her own bed, groaning and whimpering in agony. Her condition was perhaps even more pitiful, though no one felt sorry for her. Her right foot was wrapped in thick bandages, but the damage underneath was severe. All the toes had been crushed and broken when Wei Lan stomped down with all her weight. The pain was constant, sharp and burning, and the physician who had been summoned earlier shook his head gravely, saying the bones had set badly and she would likely walk with a heavy limp for the rest of her life. Worse still, when she had fallen backward onto the hard floor during the struggle, she had injured her lower back badly. Now, any attempt to sit up, stand, or even twist her body sent waves of excruciating pain up her spine. She was practically confined to her mattress, unable to perform even the simplest tasks she used to lord over. Both women were consumed by the same thought: Wei Lan. Useless. Absolutely useless. Director Lu hissed through gritted teeth, her hands gripping the silk sheets until her knuckles turned white. Her head throbbed violently with every word she spoke, but her anger outweighed the pain. That little beast, that ungrateful, wild little rat. How dare she? How dare she attack us? How dare she run away? Search the streets. Search the markets. Search every hole and corner in this city. Find her. Drag her back here. I will skin her alive. I will make her regret ever being born. Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, flashed with venomous hatred. Wei Lan, just you wait. Wherever you are hiding, I will find you. No matter how far you run, you belong here. You are nothing but trash I picked up from the gutter, and you dare bite the hand that fed you? When I get my hands on you, I will break every bone in your body. In the next room, Auntie Ma let out a long, high-pitched wail that sounded more like a wounded animal than a human. Tears of frustration and pain streamed down her face. She lay on her side, carefully avoiding putting pressure on her foot or her back, her mind replaying the terrifying moment Wei Lan had pushed her and thrown her down like a sack of old rice. Devil, she is a little devil, she moaned, clutching her pillow. My foot, my poor foot. I can't walk properly anymore. That monster. That cursed Wei Lan. I treated her so well. I fed her, I clothed her, and this is how she repays me? Ruining my life. Ruining my health. If I ever see that girl again, I will tear her apart with my own teeth. Guards. Where are the guards? Have they found her yet? Have they caught that runaway brat? But the truth was, no one had found her. Since the moment they realized Wei Lan had vanished and leaving chaos in her wake, they had sent every available hand, every able-bodied servant, and even hired people from outside to search. They had combed every street, every alley, every inn, every temple, and every corner of Qingyan City. They had checked the city gates, asked the gatekeepers, and questioned travelers. But it was as if Wei Lan had vanished into thin air. No one had seen her, no one knew where she had gone. She had simply disappeared, leaving nothing but destruction behind. The situation turned from bad to worse the morning after the incident. Director Lu, despite her splitting headache and dizziness, demanded to know about her belongings. She remembered her silver. Go check my desk. She ordered weakly to a trembling wet nurse who had come in to change the cold compress on her head. Her voice was rough and breathless. Go to my room. Look inside the locked drawer. Bring me the silver. Bring me the coins. Everything. The wet nurse hurried over, afraid to disobey. She unlocked the study door, opened the heavy wooden desk drawer, and searched thoroughly, her hands trembling. Minutes later, she returned, her face pale as paper, her head bowed low. She stood by the bed, terrified to speak. "Well," Director Liu snapped, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "Where is it? Bring it here. Hurry up, Madam Director." The woman stammered, her voice shaking. I looked everywhere, inside the drawer. There is nothing. Nothing." Director Liu frowned, confused. "What do you mean nothing?" "The silver. Even the copper coins. Gone. Everything is gone." The wet nurse whispered, tears forming in her eyes from fear. "There isn't even a single copper coin left inside the desk. It is all empty, completely empty." Director Liu's eyes went wide as saucers. Her face turned first pale, then a deep, ugly shade of red. Her chest heaved violently, and suddenly, she opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of fresh, bright blood onto the floor. Her body convulsed once, her eyes rolled back into her head, and with a loud gasp, she fainted dead away, collapsing back onto her pillows, completely unconscious. "Director Liu, Madam, someone help. She has fainted." The wet nurse screamed, rushing to her side and calling for others. Chaos erupted instantly. The whole orphanage was thrown into a panic. Wet nurses ran back and forth, fetching water, calling for a physician, and trying to revive the director. News spread like wildfire among the residents, the orphans, the servants, the cooks, and the guards. Everyone knew now what had truly happened. The rumors and whispers started immediately, passed from mouth to mouth behind closed doors or in quiet corners of the courtyard. "Did you hear? Weilon didn't just run away. She robbed the director blind. All the silver is gone? All of it? That girl. She smashed the desk, hurt Auntie Ma so badly she'll limp forever, knocked Director Liu half to death, and stole everything. Who would have thought she had that kind of courage? Or that kind of cruelty? She was always quiet and obedient. Always took the beatings without a word. Who knew she was hiding such ferocity? Good for her, honestly," whispered one older orphan quietly, glancing around to make sure no adults were listening. "They treated her worse than a dog. They deserved it." "Shoo, don't say that. If they hear you, you'll be next." "But, honestly, I don't blame her. I'd run too if I could, and I'd take everything I could carry. She's gone now, though. Disappeared completely. She's probably far away somewhere. Smart girl. If she stays, they'll kill her." While the children whispered and gossiped, the wet nurses and older servants were filled with deep worry and anxiety. Director Liu was bedridden, angry, and vengeful. Auntie Ma was crippled and in pain, unable to work or manage anything. The reputation of the orphanage was already suffering from the noise and commotion. And worst of all, the girl responsible was nowhere to be found. "What will happen to us now?" one wet nurse asked another in hushed tones, wringing her hands nervously. "Director Liu is furious. She will not stop searching for Weilon. She will spend every remaining coin just to find her and bring her back for punishment. We are doomed. We are truly doomed." "Not only that," the other replied, glancing toward the director's room where shouting had started up again as she regained consciousness. "Director Liu blames everyone but herself. She says we didn't guard the place well enough. She says we helped Weilon escape. When she gets better, or even while she is sick, she will take her anger out on all of us. We had better be very careful from now on. That girl Weilon, she left, and she took all the luck and peace of this place with her." Back in her room, Auntie Ma cried and cursed until she was hoarse, throwing pillows and cups around her room in frustration, unable to accept that a thin, weak orphan girl had overpowered her and ruined her life. "Find her. Find Weilon," she screamed again and again, tears soaking her bandages. "Search every road, every city, every province. I don't care how long it takes or how much it costs. I want her found. I want her brought back. I want to see her suffer before she dies." But miles away, that little girl they're cursing is having a peaceful sleep. For the next 2 days, the journey went smoothly, with clear skies and calm roads. No more bandits appeared. No accidents occurred, and the only sounds were the steady rhythm of hooves and wheels and the occasional laughter or conversation within the caravan. Fengyu spent the time observing the scenery, thinking about her business plans and resting comfortably. She felt lighter and happier with every mile that passed, knowing that she was putting more and more distance between herself and Qingyun City, the orphanage, and the painful memories of Weilon. When the tall, majestic gates of Lianxi City finally came into view, Fengyu's face lit up with a bright, genuine smile. The walls were grander, the city looked more prosperous, and the air itself felt different, fresh, full of opportunities, and completely free. Finally, she thought, her heart racing with excitement. I am truly far away from that nightmare. As the carriage passed through the gates and entered the wide, bustling streets lined with shops and crowds, Uncle Bai looked at her joyful expression and smiled warmly. Fengyu, he said, leaning forward slightly. Since you have just arrived, no need to rush to your relatives right away. Why don't you stay at my estate for the time being? It is spacious, safe, and comfortable. Plus, it will be much easier for us to start planning our new clothing business, and I want to treat you for saving us and our goods. What do you think? Fengyu's eyes sparkled. It was exactly what she needed. She didn't know the city yet, and wandering around alone would be troublesome and risky. Staying with Uncle Bai was the safest and smartest choice. That would be wonderful, Uncle Bai, she replied happily. Thank you so much for your kindness. I would be very grateful to stay. Then she paused, remembering her manners and business sense. She reached instinctively toward the hidden pocket of her bag where her money was kept. But tell me, how much do I owe you for the travel expenses and for staying in your manor? I have silver, I can pay you fairly. Uncle Bai burst into hearty laughter, shaking his head vigorously. He patted her shoulder affectionately. What pay? Child, put your silver away. You have already paid me in full, many times over. Do you remember the wild boar you caught? That fed everyone for days and saved us. And, more importantly, the bandits. You defeated an entire gang single-handedly, protecting all my goods, my men, and me. You saved this whole caravan. That is worth far more than any travel fee or lodging cost. You are our lucky star and our hero. You don't need to pay a single copper coin. Consider it settled. Fengyu smiled sweetly and nodded, not arguing further. She knew he was being generous, but she also knew she had value to offer. We are partners now, she thought. We will help each other plenty in the future. She patted her bag quietly. Inside, safely tucked away, were 9 large silver ingots and strings of copper coins, what remained of the fortune she had taken from Director Liu, after spending only a small portion on clothes, soap, food, and snacks. It was enough to live comfortably for a long time, but she knew better than to show it or spend it carelessly. For now, it was her safety net, and she would keep it well hidden. After some time, the carriage slowed to a halt. We have arrived, Uncle Bai announced. He stepped out first, descending gracefully. Fengyu gathered her bags and slung them on her shoulders. Standing right at the entrance were 3 people, a dignified middle-aged woman dressed in fine silk, Uncle Bai's wife, Madame Zhang, and 2 young people, a boy and a girl, around 14 or 15 years old, clearly his children. They were all smiling warmly, ready to welcome the master of the house home. Father, you're back. The young girl cried out happily, stepping forward. She's pretty and well-dressed, looking exactly like a young lady from a wealthy family. But then, her eyes moved past her father and landed directly on Fengyu, who was just stepping out from behind the carriage. The smile vanished instantly from the girl's face. Her eyes went wide, round with pure shock. She froze in place, her hands flying up to cover her mouth. She looked from Fengyu, who stood there calmly with a polite smile, back to her father, and then back to Fengyu again. Her whole body trembled slightly, and she pointed a shaking finger directly at the small girl in blue. Father, who is this? She stammered, her voice trembling. Uncle Bai blinked, about to laugh and introduce her properly. This is, but before he could finish speaking, his wife, Madame Zhang, had also seen Fengyu. Her expression, which had been warm and welcoming just seconds ago, darkened instantly. Her eyes narrowed sharply as she looked at her husband, then at Fengyu, scanning her neat clothes and pretty face that has gotten better complexion. She threw a cold, suspicious gaze. Her face hardened into a stern, angry look. "By Hua Yuan," she said, her voice low and icy, using his full name to show her displeasure. "Explain yourself. You went away for business and now you return, bringing a young girl with you? Dressed well, traveling in your carriage, and looking quite like." She didn't finish the sentence, but her meaning was loud and clear. Her eyes flashed with jealousy and anger. "Have you been deceiving me all these years? Did you secretly have another family somewhere? Is this your love child you are bringing home now?" The atmosphere turned freezing cold in an instant. Uncle Bai's mouth fell open, completely stunned, unable to react fast enough. Fengyu watched the scene unfold, understanding immediately what was happening. She saw the servants nearby freezing, the children looking confused and alarmed, and Uncle Bai turning pale with shock. If she stayed silent, things would get messy and awkward very quickly. She couldn't let her benefactor be misunderstood like that. She stepped forward gracefully, walking past the horses and luggage, and stopped right in front of Madame Zhang and the children. She stood straight, her posture elegant and respectful, then bowed deeply, lowering her head politely. "Good day, madam, young master, young miss," she said clearly, her voice soft, sweet, and carrying a calm maturity that belied her age. She straightened up and looked them all in the eye with a gentle, innocent smile. "Please do not be angry or misunderstand Uncle Bai," she said smoothly. "My name is Shin Fengyu. I am 12 years old. And I am absolutely not his child, nor am I related to him by blood or anything like that. I am just a young traveler from Qingyun City. I happened to meet Uncle Bai on the road, and I asked if I could tag along with his caravan to come here, because I have relatives living in Lianxi City, and I had no other safe way to travel. He was kind enough to agree and let me ride with him." As soon as she said her surname, Shin, Madame Zhang, and the two children exchanged a sharp, meaningful glance. They looked back at Uncle Bai, their expressions changing from anger to intense curiosity and doubt. Shin. That was the surname of the most powerful, wealthy, and respected clan in Lianxi City, the family everyone knew and feared a little, the family with deep pockets and connections to officials. Uncle Bai finally recovered from his shock, wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. He nodded vigorously, confirming her words. "Yes, yes, exactly as she says. Wife, children, listen to me. It is just as she said. I met this young lady in Qingyun. She is alone, yes, but she is extraordinary. In fact, she is the one who helped us greatly during the journey. We had encounters with trouble and she is very capable and clever. We have much to discuss and explain. But please let us not stand here at the gate. Let us go inside, and I will tell you everything properly." Madame Zhang looked at Fengyu again, at her fine manners, her calm confidence, and her clean clothes. She looked at her husband's earnest face. Still skeptical and full of questions, but trusting him enough to hear him out, she finally nodded slowly. Very well," she said stiffly. "We will talk about this inside. Come in then." She turned and walked toward the main hall, her children following behind, constantly glancing back at Fengyu with curious, wide eyes. Fengyu smiled happily, completely unbothered by the tension earlier. She adjusted her bag on her shoulders and walked lightly into the courtyard, admiring the beautiful architecture and greenery around her. Behind her, the servants and guards who had traveled with them began unloading the goods, their faces full of amusement and knowing smiles. They had seen everything Fengyu could do. They knew she wasn't just some random girl or a secret daughter. To them, she was their little hero and lucky charm, and seeing the master's family shocked and confused was actually quite entertaining. Fengyu took a deep breath of the fresh air inside the Bai estate and carefully followed them behind. Inside the spacious main hall of the Bai residence, everyone gathered and took their seats in the formal guest reception area. The room was well lit and furnished with fine carved wooden chairs and tables, radiating the quiet wealth of a long-established merchant family. Uncle Bai instructed the servants in a warm tone, "Quickly, bring the best tea and a plate of sweet osmanthus cakes for the little lady here. Treat her as our honored guest." He then turned to Feng Yu and gestured kindly. "Come, child, sit here and rest." Feng Yu slipped her heavy bags off her shoulders and placed them neatly beside her feet. She nodded obediently and sat gracefully on the nearest chair, her posture straight yet relaxed. She looked calm and composed, seemingly unaware of the intense curiosity focused entirely on her. Once everyone was settled, Madame Zhang sitting with a stern but attentive expression, the two children leaning forward with wide eyes, and the servants standing quietly by the walls, Uncle Bai began recounting the entire journey from the moment he met her. He spoke in detail about her manners, her intelligence, and how she had claimed to be visiting relatives. But as he spoke further, his voice grew more animated and filled with awe. And then he said, gesturing widely with his hands, "The first morning as we're about to have our meal, suddenly, we were surrounded by nearly 20 bandits from the Black Tiger gang. They were rough, armed, and demanding we hand over everything we owned. We drew our weapons and prepared to fight, ready to defend our lives and goods, but we were outnumbered and it looked very bleak." He paused for effect, looking at his family's shocked faces. And then, just as they were about to rush us, we heard a voice call out. We all turned, and what did we see? We saw a massive wild boar flying through the air. It was soaring high, legs flailing, heading straight for the bandits. It crashed right into them like a thunderbolt, knocking them all down. And when the dust settled, who did we see standing there alone? Only Feng Yu. She was just standing there, smiling casually, as if she hadn't just thrown a mountain at them. The bandits were terrified out of their wits. They thought they had encountered a demon or a spirit. They scrambled up and ran away screaming, leaving us completely unharmed. Madame Zhang and the children gasped in unison, hands flying to their mouths. But that is not all. Uncle Bai continued enthusiastically. That boar was huge. We skinned it, chopped it up, and we feasted on its meat for days. It was tender, rich, and delicious, enough to feed every man in the caravan until they were full and happy. We kept the best parts too. Go fetch the hide and the tusks we brought back. Bring them here so everyone can see," he ordered. A servant hurried out and returned moments later, struggling slightly under the weight of the thick, heavy boar hide and the long, curved tusks. They laid them out on the floor in the center of the room. Everyone leaned in to look closely. The hide was enormous, stretching wide across the floor, far larger than any wild boar hide they had ever seen. It was thick, coarse, and durable, clearly belonging to a beast of incredible size. And the tusks. They were long, sharp, and heavy, curving dangerously, gleaming white and solid. Just looking at them made one imagine how deadly this animal must have been in the wild. This is the size of it?" Madame Zhang whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "This is no ordinary boar. This is a monster of the forest. Even a hunter with traps and hounds would struggle to catch one this big." Their gazes immediately shifted from the massive trophies over to the small girl sitting quietly. Feng Yu was currently holding a delicate porcelain cup in both hands, sipping her tea slowly and elegantly. Her legs, which didn't quite reach the floor from the height of the chair, were swinging back and forth gently in a carefree rhythm. She took a bite of the soft, sweet osmanthus cake, chewing happily with a look of pure enjoyment on her face, completely unbothered by everyone staring at her. Madame Zhang frowned, her mind unable to connect the terrifying beast on the floor with this small, sweet-looking girl. She leaned forward slightly, her voice filled with deep doubt and confusion. "Little Miss Shin, forgive me for asking, but this animal, it is massive. It has sharp tusks and thick skin. Even grown men with spears would risk their lives hunting it. You said you were walking alone near the stream. How exactly did you catch this creature? And kill it all by yourself?" Feng Yu swallowed the cake, wiped her mouth gently with a handkerchief, and looked up innocently. She blinked her large eyes at them, as if the answer was the simplest thing in the world. "Oh, that," she said casually, picking up another piece of cake. "I just punched it." "Pardon?" Madame Zhang blinked. The children leaned closer. Even the servants looked startled. "I punched it," Feng Yu repeated calmly, taking a small bite. Let me see, 10 or 12 times, I think. Right around the head." It got dizzy, then it fell down and didn't get up anymore. It was quite easy. She shrugged her shoulders slightly, then returned her full attention to her tea and snacks, dangling her feet again as if discussing nothing more important than the weather. Uncle Bai, who was sitting nearby listening intently, suddenly slumped back in his chair with a loud sound, his eyes wide and his mouth hanging open. He had completely forgotten to ask how she had defeated the beast that day. At that moment, he had been so stunned by the sight of a flying boar, so distracted by the delicious taste of the roasted meat, and so busy scolding her for being reckless and wandering off alone. It had never even occurred to him to wonder exactly how a small girl killed a monster boar before throwing it. He stared at Feng Yu in utter shock. 10 or 12 punches. He thought frantically. She punched this thick-skinned, bone-headed beast 10 times and it died? And then she threw it like a sack of cotton? And I just scolded her for being careless. I scolded a girl who can punch a wild boar to death. His mind replayed that morning, him standing tall, crossing his arms, lecturing her seriously about being careful, telling her she's still a little girl, while she just nodded meekly and looked hurt. He suddenly felt a wave of heat rush to his face, a mix of embarrassment, awe, and sheer disbelief. Madame Zhang and her children were equally stunned, frozen in silence as they looked back and forth between the giant tusks, the heavy hide, and the tiny, delicate fists of the girl who was now happily licking sweet crumbs off her fingers. The gap between reality and what their minds could process was simply too wide to bridge. 10 punches. To a wild boar. Alone. And then she threw it. The heavy wooden doors of the reception hall suddenly creaked open, cutting through the thick, stunned silence that had settled over everyone. Stepping in quickly, with long, hurried strides, was the eldest son of the Bai household, Bai Jingyuan. His cheeks were flushed bright red, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead, and his chest heaved slightly from running all the way from the outer courtyard. He had been attending to some matters at the family shop when word reached him that his father's caravan had returned. But it wasn't just the news of his father's arrival that made him rush back. Along the way, he had caught fragments of wild, unbelievable stories being whispered by the guards and servants unloading goods. Flying through the air. Threw it just like that. Defeated 20 bandits all by herself. At first, he thought the servants had gone mad from exhaustion or were just telling tall tales to amuse themselves. But curiosity and worry had driven him to run back as fast as he could, desperate to see his father safe and hear the truth for himself. As he entered the room, his eyes immediately locked onto Uncle Bai sitting at the head table. Seeing his father looking healthy, uninjured, and smiling warmly, the heavy weight that had been pressing down on Jing Yuan's heart instantly vanished. He let out a long breath of relief, his tense shoulders dropping. He had feared the journey might have been dangerous, bandits were common on those roads, but seeing his father safe made every strange rumor seem less important. "Father, you are truly back," Jing Yuan exclaimed, stepping forward with a bright, happy smile. "Thank the heavens you're safe. I heard you encountered trouble on the road. I was so worried." But then, his gaze drifted downward to the center of the room, and his words died in his throat. Right there on the floor, spread out wide and taking up a large space, was the massive, coarse hide of a wild boar. Beside it lay 2 enormous, curved tusks, pale, sharp, and terrifyingly large, resting heavily on the polished wooden floorboards. Jing Yuan's eyes went wide as saucers. He froze mid-step, staring at the skin and tusks in utter disbelief. He was a young man who often accompanied his father on business and knew the lands well. He had seen many hunted animals, including wild boars. But this was beyond anything he had ever seen or even heard of. This beast was not just big, it was a monster. Even the most experienced hunters in the region, working in groups with spears and traps, would consider capturing such a creature a legendary feat. His jaw dropped slightly. He looked from the hide to the tusks, then back to the hide again, trying to comprehend the sheer size and weight of the animal it once belonged to. How is this possible? He muttered to himself, forgetting his manners for a moment. Slowly, he lifted his head, scanning the room for an explanation. That was when he noticed the small figure sitting quietly near the side table. Jingyuan blinked rapidly, shaking his head slightly to clear his vision. He turned his gaze back to his father, his expression full of confusion and awe. He pointed toward the massive hide on the floor. "Father," he asked, his voice hushed and thick with disbelief. This hide and these tusks, they belong to a wild boar, but it is colossal. It is larger than any I have ever seen. How did you manage to catch such a beast? Did you bring a whole team of hunters? Or did you find it already dead? Even then, carrying it back would require 4 or 5 strong men. How did you do it? He looked at his father, expecting a story of bravery, strength, and perhaps a lucky hunt. Uncle Bai looked at his eldest son, saw the confusion written all over his face, and let out a proud, hearty laugh that echoed around the room. Then he recounted how this massive boar was caught. After hearing it, Jingyuan is more surprised and looked at Fengyu, who smiled at him innocently. Bai Huayuan suddenly slapped his forehead as he remembered an important matter. He turned to his family, his expression turning earnest and enthusiastic. "One more thing," he announced. "I have invited little Fengyu to stay with us for a while before she goes to visit her relatives in the city. But it is not just about hospitality. We have begun discussing a completely new kind of business venture together, and once you hear the details and see what she has in mind, I believe you will all be very interested and perhaps want to be involved too." He glanced toward Madame Zhang, who simply nodded slowly, though her eyes still held that lingering look of shock and disbelief from everything she had just heard. Even so, she was a sensible woman and a good hostess. She turned to a servant standing nearby and gave her instructions. "Prepare the guest room on the west side immediately. Open the windows to air it out, change the bed linens to fresh ones, and heat plenty of water so the young lady can bathe and freshen up after the long journey." The servants bowed respectfully and hurried away to carry out her orders without delay. Then, Bai Huayuan turned his attention back to Fengyu, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Fengyu, earlier on the road you showed me those wonderful drawings of yours, the new clothing styles and designs you spoke of. Would you mind if I showed them to my wife and children?" Fengyu smiled easily and nodded her head. "Of course not, Uncle Bai. These are your family, there is nothing to hide. Please show them." Bai Huayuan reached inside his robes and carefully pulled out the rolled papers he had kept safe, spreading them out on the table for everyone to see. His wife, Madame Zhang, and his 3 children all leaned in closely to look. At first, just like him when he first saw them, they were filled with confusion and curiosity. The shapes and cuts were unlike any robes or garments they had ever seen before. But Bai Huayuan explained everything thoroughly and clearly, just as Fengyu had explained it to him. He told them about the practicality, the comfort, the freedom of movement, and the different variations suitable for every season and every type of person. He spoke about the modest adjustments she had made to fit their customs, the different sizes planned for various body types, and the potential to use fine silks or durable cottons to suit both nobles and common folk. He described how these designs were simpler yet more elegant, easier to make, easier to wash, and far more functional than the layered, heavy clothing everyone was used to. As he spoke, the initial confusion on their faces slowly transformed into surprise, deep thought, and eventually, genuine interest. They could clearly see the logic and brilliance behind every line drawn on the paper, realizing that what lay before them was not just a change in fashion, but something that could revolutionize how people dressed and lived. After the long discussion, it finally came to an end. A servant stepped forward respectfully to lead Fengyu to her quarters. They walked through corridors and past a quiet courtyard until they reached a bright, clean room in the west wing, the guest quarters Madame Zhang had ordered prepared. As soon as Feng Yu stepped inside, her eyes lit up with genuine delight. The room was spacious, furnished with a soft bed draped in clean silk covers, a carved wooden wardrobe, a dressing table, and comfortable chairs. But what made her happiest was the layout. Connected to the main room was a separate, smaller chamber designed specifically as a private washroom, complete with a large wooden tub and jugs of fresh water already prepared. No more washing by the stream or in cramped spaces. Having a private bathing area separated from the sleeping room was a luxury she truly appreciated. The servant followed her in and stepped forward with a bow. "Miss Shin, please let me help you undress and scrub your back. The water is warm and ready." Feng Yu quickly shook her head with a polite smile, taking a small step back. Her heart raced slightly at the thought, "No, I can't let anyone help." The scars from her back, old and new, were still there, marks left from years of abuse in the orphanage. If a servant saw them, she would surely report it to Madame Zhang or Uncle Bai, and questions would follow, questions she wasn't ready to answer or explain. "Thank you very much, but I prefer to bathe alone," she said softly but firmly, her tone kind yet leaving no room for argument. "I am used to doing everything by myself, so please do not worry. You may leave now. I will call if I need anything." Seeing her insistence, the servant nodded respectfully and retreated, closing the door gently behind her. As soon as the footsteps faded away, Feng Yu walked over and bolted the door securely. She let out a small breath of relief, then turned to unpack her things. She took out the fresh peach-colored hanfu and soft new undergarments she had bought, along with her towel and the block of herbal soap. Carrying them into the washroom, she soaked and scrubbed herself thoroughly, washing away all the dust, road grime, and the faint lingering smell of the wild boar. The warm water felt heavenly against her skin, soothing her muscles and making her feel fresh and completely clean. After drying herself and dressing in her soft new clothes, she gathered her damp hair up loosely and secured it with a simple wooden hairpin, leaving the ends to fall softly down her back. Then she collected all the clothes she had worn previously, the purple and blue hanfu she had worn during the journey, and all her old undergarments, as well as her towel, bundling them neatly in her arms. She unlocked the door and stepped out, finding a servant waiting nearby in the corridor. "Excuse me," Feng Yu asked politely, "could you tell me where I may wash these dirty clothes?" The servant's eyes widened in surprise, and she immediately shook her head, stepping forward to take the bundle from Feng Yu's hands. "Oh, Miss Shin, you don't need to trouble yourself with such work. Washing clothes is what servants are for. Please just give them to me. I will wash them thoroughly and have them dried and pressed for you." Feng Yu hesitated for a moment, then smiled gratefully and let her take them. "Thank you so much. I appreciate it." She didn't insist further. It felt nice to be treated like a proper young lady rather than someone who had to fight for every scrap and do every chore herself. She went back into her room, closed the door, and flopped backward onto the soft, springy bed. Sinking into the thick mattress and fluffy pillow, she let out a long, deep sigh of pure contentment. "This life," she thought, staring up at the carved wooden ceiling, "this life is so much more exciting than my old one in the modern world." Back then, she had been a pampered, sheltered daughter of a wealthy family, safe, comfortable, and quiet. She had never had to fight, never had to run away, never had to sleep rough or worry about food. She certainly never expected to wake up in another body, in an ancient world, with superhuman strength she couldn't explain. Thinking back on everything that had happened in just a few days. Escaping the orphanage, punching a wild boar to death, throwing it like a cannonball at bandits, and that food thief that she had thrown on the floor, she couldn't help but burst into quiet giggles, rolling onto her side and covering her mouth with her hand. Who would have believed it? If my parents could see me now, they'd probably faint from shock, but also be so proud. A small pang of sadness tugged at her heart. She missed the comfort of the modern world, her phone, and she missed her mother's cooking, her father's stories, and all the delicious foods from every corner of the world she had been able to enjoy back then. Spicy hot pots, creamy desserts, fresh seafood, street snacks, everything. But maybe I can do something about that here, she suddenly realized, her eyes lighting up again. She sat up slightly, thinking hard. She hadn't been a cook in her past life. She had never needed to learn. But now she was living in Wei Lan's body, a girl who had done every kind of menial labor, including cooking and fire-making, since she was small. Muscle memory, right? Fengyu wondered. I remember when I escaped. I was able to use a flint to start a fire easily, even though I'd never done it before in my other life. My hands just knew how. That means Wei Lan's skills are still here, inside me. If she could cook, then maybe I can too. I just need to try. If I can recreate the flavors I remember, maybe I can bring all those wonderful dishes to this world too. Her mind raced with ideas, but then she remembered something important, something she couldn't put off any longer. The orphanage. Director Liu and Auntie Ma were still there, probably recovering, still abusing children, still stealing funds, and still treating innocent orphans like trash. She couldn't just leave things as they were. She needed to expose their corruption and cruelty to the authorities so that the other children left behind could live better lives. I need to write a letter to the magistrate of Qingyun City, she decided firmly. I need to detail everything. How they misuse funds, beat the children, steal donations, and treat the orphans worse than animals. But she looked around the empty room. I don't have paper, ink, or a brush here. She quickly stood up, smoothed out her clothes, and adjusted her hairpin. This was urgent, and Uncle Bai was the only person she could trust right now. She hurried out of her room and began walking briskly through the corridors, looking for Uncle Bai, hoping he hadn't gone to rest yet. Fengyu glanced left and right along the winding corridors, but not a single servant was in sight. Eager to get what she needed, she didn't wait, but hurried straight toward the main hall. As she drew closer, she saw Uncle Bai, standing in the center, giving out clear instructions. He's gesturing toward the piles of goods they had brought back. Move the fine silks and spices into the west storage room and lock it securely, he told them kindly but firmly. The rest can go into the outer warehouse. You have all worked hard today. Once everything is arranged properly, you may go and rest for a while. Uncle Bai, Fengyu called out as she stepped into view, walking quickly toward him. He turned around immediately, a warm smile forming on his face when he saw her. Fengyu. Have you settled in well? Is there something you need? I am quite comfortable, thank you, she replied, stopping before him. But I do require a few things urgently. Could I please have some paper, ink, and a fine writing brush? Uncle Bai looked at her earnest expression, but did not ask a single question about why she needed them. He simply nodded and gestured to a nearby servant. Go to my study immediately and bring the best quality paper, ink stick, and a fine-tipped brush. Do it at once. Understood, master. The servant bowed respectfully and hurried off. In just a few moments, he returned carrying a clean wooden tray holding exactly what Fengyu had asked for. The paper was smooth and white, the ink block was fragrant and of high quality, and the brush was soft, well-crafted, and perfect for detailed writing. Thank you very much, Fengyu said gratefully, taking the items carefully. Without wasting another second, she turned and hurried back to her room, her mind already busy organizing her thoughts and what she intended to write. Once inside, she closed the door and composed herself, sitting at the small carved table near the window. She began forming sentences in her mind, planning every word carefully. But just as she was ready to start, a sudden worry struck her. Writing conventions and characters might differ here compared to what I know. If I write characters the way I remember them, they might be unrecognizable or misunderstood. She quickly opened the door and looked out, spotting a servant walking past carrying fresh water jugs. Excuse me, brother, she called politely. The servant stopped and bowed. Yes, mission? Do you need assistance? Could I trouble you to lend me one or two books? Any kind will do, just something with regular writing in it. I wish to look through them for a moment. Of course, miss. Please wait just a short while. The servant returned shortly after with 2 books in his hands. One was a volume of historical records, the other a collection of daily teachings and essays. Feng Yu thanked him and went back inside, spreading the books open on the table under the bright afternoon light. She scanned the pages carefully, comparing the characters to the ones she knew from her past life. Just as she had suspected, while many characters were similar or easily recognizable, quite a few were written differently, some with different strokes, radicals, or simplified forms. If she wrote exactly as she was used to, it could cause confusion or be deemed incorrect. She realized she would have to be very careful, sticking mostly to simple, common characters and straightforward phrases so the reader would understand every word clearly. She dipped the brush into the inkstone, grinding it gently until the consistency was smooth and dark. With steady hands, she began to write. She started formally, addressing the letter clearly. To the good and mighty magistrate of Qingyun City. Beneath this, she added a short, respectful note. I apologize deeply for taking the liberty to write to you and addressing you only by your title, for I do not have the honor of knowing your name. I write this only because of matters of great importance and urgency concerning the welfare of the people under your governance. From there, she continued writing everything she needed to say. Detailing the situation at the orphanage, the misuse of funds, the cruel treatment of children, and the corruption she had witnessed. She made sure to include all crucial information that could serve as evidence. When she finished the very last word, she set the brush down and let the sheet lie flat to dry completely, fanning it gently with her hand to speed up the process in the warm afternoon air. Once the ink was fully dry, she took another blank sheet of paper and folded it skillfully around the written letter, shaping it neatly into an envelope-like covering to protect the contents. However, she realized she had no glue, paste, or sealing wax to close it shut. She rummaged through her bag, moving aside her personal items and belongings until her fingers touched something soft and thin, a delicate, pale pink silk ribbon she had bought along with her clothes. Perfect. She wrapped the ribbon neatly around the folded paper, tying it in a tight but pretty bow, securing it just like wrapping a small gift. There was no way it would open by accident now, and it looked respectful and proper. Satisfied, she grabbed the letter and ran out of her room, hurrying toward the main hall again, hoping Uncle Bai hadn't left or gone to rest yet. Mission? Why are you running in such a hurry? She skidded to a halt and looked up to see Bai Jingwan walking toward her, dressed in fresh robes, looking relaxed and ready for the afternoon. Feng Yu quickly composed herself, smoothing down her clothes and bowing politely. Good day, young Master Jingwan. I apologize for my haste and lack of manners. I was looking for your father. I have finished writing this letter, and I need to send it urgently to someone in Qingyun City. Jingwan smiled gently and shook his head. Young master? That sounds too formal. Since we are going to be seeing much more of each other, you may simply address me as brother from now on. He then continued, as for father, I am afraid he has gone out to inspect one of our shops in the city and won't be back for some time. But you do not need him for this, I can help you. He gestured for her to walk with him. Actually, sending letters or parcels to other cities is very easy and fast for our family. We have a special arrangement with official courier stations and private express messengers. We maintain fast horses and relay stations set up along the roads. What usually takes a caravan several days to travel slowly can be done by these messengers in just a day or two. It is much quicker and far more reliable than sending letters with merchants. Feng Yu's face instantly lit up with pure joy and relief. Really? That fast? That is wonderful news, brother. This letter really needs to arrive as quickly as possible. Then it is settled, Jingwan said with a confident nod. Come with me. I was actually about to go into the town center to handle some matters myself. I will take you to the courier station personally so you can see exactly how it works, and along the way, you can have a good look at our city market. It is bustling and lively at this hour, and it will be a perfect chance for you to familiarize yourself with the layout and the people here. I would love that. Thank you so much, brother. Feng Yu beamed, clutching her carefully tied letter close to her chest. "Then let us go before the sun gets too low," he said warmly, leading the way. They rode comfortably in a light carriage through the lively streets of Lianxi City, passing rows of shops displaying silks, spices, and exotic goods, until they arrived before a sturdy, well-maintained building with a large signboard reading "Swift Courier Service." It was the place where urgent letters and parcels were sent across regions with great speed and reliability. As they stepped down and walked toward the entrance, Feng Yu instinctively reached to her side, intending to take out some silver to pay for the service, only to grasp empty air. She froze for a moment, her hand hovering there. In her rush to finish the letter and run out to find Uncle Bai, she had left her bag with all her money in her room. She bit her lips slightly, a little flustered. "Express delivery is never cheap, and I don't have a single copper coin with me." Jingyuan noticed her small gesture and the change in her expression immediately. He stepped closer and asked gently, "What is it, Feng Yu? Did you forget something?" She looked up at him with an apologetic smile. "Brother Jingyuan, I just realized I left my money in my room. I know sending a letter this far and asking for the fastest service costs money. I didn't mean to be careless." Jingyuan burst into a warm, amused laugh and patted her lightly on the shoulder. "Is that all? You don't need to worry about such small things. Consider it done. Besides, compared to what you have done for our family, paying for a letter is nothing at all." He led her confidently inside to the counter. A neatly dressed attendant came forward with a polite bow. Jingyuan placed a small piece of silver on the counter, more than enough, and said firmly, "We want the absolute fastest delivery available. It must arrive within 1 or 2 days." The attendant accepted the payment and then took the letter Feng Yu handed over. He glanced at it briefly, a faint look of amusement crossing his face. The letter was neatly folded and tied with a pretty silk ribbon, looking more like a small gift or a love note than an official document or urgent message. But he was well trained and didn't linger on appearances. He just asked professionally, "Understood. And may I know who the recipient is and where it should be delivered?" Feng Yu spoke clearly and seriously. "It is for the good magistrate of Qingyun City. It is extremely urgent. Please ensure it goes directly to his hands." The attendant's pen slipped slightly, making a small mark on his record book. He looked up at her with wide, startled eyes. Even Jingyuan, standing beside her, stiffened in surprise. The magistrate of Qingyun City? That was no ordinary person. He was a high-ranking official, the highest authority in that entire region. Sending a letter to him was one thing, but sending it via express courier, marked as urgent, and addressed with such formal respect. It was something only wealthy merchants or influential families usually did. Jing Yuan's mind raced rapidly with possibilities. Who exactly is this little girl? She claims to have relatives here, she has immense strength, she knows unique business ideas, and now she writes urgent letters to city magistrates? Is she perhaps from a hidden noble family? Or does she have some deep grievance to report? He wanted to ask, wanted to know the reason, but he bit his tongue and stopped himself. She had her secrets, just as everyone did, and he knew better than to press her. The attendant also wisely kept his questions to himself, simply noting down the destination respectfully and promising the fastest service possible. Once the letter was handed over and safely recorded, they walked back out into the bright afternoon sun. Jingwan, deciding to lighten the mood, led her toward the busiest part of the market. "Come, I'll treat you to some of the best snacks in the city." They strolled happily along the crowded streets, Jingyuan pointing out interesting shops and explaining what was sold where, while Feng Yu looked around with sparkling eyes, enjoying the sights, smells, and energy of the place. Suddenly, a wave of louder voices and excited chatter drifted over from a small crowd gathered nearby. Curious, they slowed down and listened. "Did you hear the news? It's spreading everywhere," one man said loudly. "There's a monster girl roaming the roads. The Black Tiger gang got completely wiped out by her." "I heard that too," another person chimed in, shaking his head in disbelief. "Nearly half of them are severely injured, lying in hiding, too scared to move. They say they'll never rob travelers again." How did that even happen? Asked a third, looking confused. The Black Tiger Gang has dozens of men, all rough and tough. How could a girl defeat them? And what do you mean by injured? Were they beaten? Or cursed? That's the strangest part. The first man lowered his voice dramatically, drawing more listeners. According to the physician who treated them, the girl didn't even get close to fight them with her hands. They said she threw a wild boar at them. A massive, giant wild boar. It came flying through the air like a boulder, crashing right into their group and knocking them all flat. And when they looked to see who did it, it was just a little girl. Skinny, small, looked like she hadn't eaten a proper meal in her life, and she was smiling at them the whole time. The crowd burst into a mix of gasps, laughter, and shivers of fear. Threw a boar? Flying through the air? That's impossible. She must be a spirit or a demon in human skin. Fomu listened to every word, and before she could stop herself, a soft chuckle escaped her lips. She covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking slightly. They are right, you know, she thought to herself, amused. I do look skinny. The body I'm using belonged to Waylon, who was starved and mistreated for years. She barely had enough to eat her whole life. I really do look like I haven't eaten anything. But lucky for me, even with this thin frame, I'm alive, healthy, and perfectly capable of knocking bad people flat on their backs. Jingyuan, who had been watching her reaction closely the whole time, saw that instead of looking shocked or scared, she was actually smiling and laughing softly. A strange, nervous feeling crept up his spine. He suddenly remembered the giant hide and tusks back at the house and his father's stories. To everyone else, this is a terrifying legend, but to her, it sounds like they are describing a normal afternoon activity. He cleared his throat quickly and gently guided her away from the crowd. Ahem, let's move along, Fengyu. Best not to linger here and draw attention or trouble. They walked for a few more minutes, moving deeper into the bustling commercial district, when another large gathering caught their attention. This crowd was even bigger, louder, and full of cheers and shouts of encouragement. A wooden stage had been set up in an open square, decorated with colorful banners. People were packed tightly around it, craning their necks to see. What is this? Fengyu asked, her curiosity piqued again. It's a strength competition, Jingyuan explained as they squeezed through to get a better view. Every now and then, wealthy families or merchants host these events for entertainment and to find capable people. It's simple. You lift heavy weights, carry stones, or compete in strength tests. Whoever proves to be the strongest wins the grand prize. Fengyu looked toward the stage. Several large, burly men were lining up. Some were tall and broad like bears, others were thick and muscular like oxen. Their arms were as big as tree trunks, their chests wide and powerful. They looked exactly like what people expected strong men to look like. Her lips slowly curled into a wide, bright smile. Her eyes lit up with excitement. This looks fun. Then she heard a man with a loud voice announcing the rewards from the top of the stage. Grand prize. 5 solid silver taels. And this exquisite jade token from the Shin family. He held up a smooth, glowing green jade piece carved with intricate patterns. Whoever holds this token has the privilege to eat any dish, any time at the famous Shin family restaurant, where the food is said to be fit for emperors and so expensive even rich merchants hesitate to go often. It is yours if you're the strongest today. 5 silver taels and unlimited expensive food. Fengyu's eyes practically shone like stars. This was exactly what she needed, money for her plans, and the chance to taste the best food in the city. She turned immediately to Jingyuan, tugging gently at his sleeve, her voice filled with determination. Brother Jingyuan, I want to join. I'm going to compete. Jingyuan's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He looked at her small, slender frame, then at the giant, muscle-bound men currently flexing on stage. He completely forgot for a split second all the stories about flying boars and bandits. He grabbed her hand anxiously. No, absolutely not. It's far too dangerous. Those men are huge and powerful. They could hurt you by accident. You don't need money, and you certainly don't need to strain yourself like that. But Fengyu had already made up her mind. She shook her head firmly, pulled her hand free, and before he could say another word, she squeezed through the crowd and ran straight toward the registration table at the side of the stage. "Excuse me. I want to sign up," she called out loudly and clearly. The officials managing the registration blinked in surprise when they saw a small, young girl step forward, while behind her, Jingwon stood frozen, rubbing his forehead in helplessness. The crowd around murmured in surprise and amusement, but no one turned her away. The reward was so grand that people from all walks of life were lining up, and the organizers welcomed every participant. Fengyu stood confidently at the end of the long line, waiting for her turn, her smile bright and full of anticipation. "Just you wait," she thought, looking at the massive weights and heavy stones set up on the stage. "You haven't seen what real strength looks like." Fengyu stepped up to the registration table and gave her name simply as Feng, nothing more. Jingyuan stood right beside her, his eyes wide and pleading, silently begging her to reconsider, shaking his head repeatedly and making small grabbing motions with his hands as if trying to pull her back without making a scene. But Fengyu pretended not to notice, standing straight and calm while the attendant wrote down the single name on the list. When she turned back to join the other participants, she was met with a mix of amused glances and dismissive smirks. The burly men lined up around her looked her up and down, their eyes calculating and relaxed. To them, she barely counted as a person, let alone a rival. Because of years of severe malnourishment in the orphanage, Wei Lan's body growth had been stunted badly. Although she was actually 12 years old, she looked no bigger or taller than an average 8-year-old child. Small, slender, and light-boned. Even though she had eaten plenty of rich food and slept deeply and comfortably over the past few days, gaining back some healthy color in her cheeks and a tiny bit of softness to her frame, she was still far from the proper height and build of a girl her age. She looked delicate, fragile, and completely harmless, exactly like the kind of child who would get blown away by a strong wind, let alone lift heavy stones. "Look at that," one large man muttered to his companion, nodding his chin toward her. "Even a little girl has come to try her luck. That's one less serious competitor for us to worry about. She probably got lost or wandered away from her parents," another laughed loudly, flexing his massive arm muscles that were thicker than Fengyu's entire body. "She'll run away crying before the first round even ends. Let her stay. It makes us look even stronger by comparison." Fengyu just smiled sweetly at them, her hands clasped politely in front of her. "Go ahead and laugh," she thought to herself. "Just wait until you see what this little girl can do." Once every participant had signed their name and gathered in front of the stage, the host, a loud, energetic man wearing bright robes, stepped forward and raised his hands to quiet the buzzing crowd. "Listen well, everyone. Listen closely to the rules of our competition," he shouted, his voice carrying easily across the square. "We have 3 rounds of testing and then a final match. It is simple, fair, and straightforward." He pointed to the side of the stage where various heavy objects were lined up, thick iron weights, solid stone blocks, and heavy wooden beams. "First round, you will come up one by one. You must lift this iron weight, 50 caddies, raise it above your head, and hold it for 3 breaths. If you do it successfully, you move on. If you cannot lift it, or drop it, or fail to hold it, you are out." He gestured to an even bigger set of items behind them. "Second round. For those who pass, the weight increases to 100 caddies. Same rule, lift it high, hold it steady. Only the strongest will remain." Then he pointed to 2 massive stone platforms at the very back. "Third round, the remaining contestants must carry this heavy stone block 150 caddies from one end of the stage to the other and back again. The last 2 men standing will enter our final stage." The host paused, letting the tension build, before continuing dramatically. "And for the final round, the 2 strongest competitors will face each other directly. You will wrestle within the marked circle. Whoever pushes the other out of the boundary, or makes them touch the ground with anything other than their feet, is the winner. And that person takes home 5 silver taels and the precious Shin family jade token. Cheers erupted from the crowd. The rules were clear, brutal, and exciting. Remember, the host warned loudly. No weapons, no dirty tricks, and no helping each other. It is pure strength and endurance. Now, let the games begin. First participant, step forward. Jingyuan stood at the very front of the crowd, his face pale, wiping cold sweat from his forehead. He watched Fengyu standing near the back of the line, looking tiny among giants, and sighed deeply. Father, Mother, I tried to stop her. I really did. But I have a feeling. Today, everyone here is about to witness something that will change their lives forever. Fengyu shifted her weight happily from one foot to the other, her eyes sparkling. She watched the first few men step up, groaning and straining to lift the 50 catty weight. Some succeeded with red faces and bulging veins, while others failed immediately, stumbling back in shame. 50 catties? 150 catties? She thought, suppressing a giggle. That's lighter than the boar I threw at the bandits. This is going to be fun. The first round went by quickly, feeling more like a warm-up test. The 50 catty weight was heavy enough to weed out the truly weak, and most of the burly, muscular participants managed to heave it up like it's nothing. The crowd cheered loudly for each one, enjoying the display of raw power. Then came Fengyu's turn. The moment her name, Feng, was called out, every head in the square turned at once. Conversation died down completely. All eyes were glued to her small figure as she stepped lightly up the wooden steps and onto the raised platform. Standing beside the heavy iron weight, she looked even tinier, like a child standing next to an adult. Many in the crowd leaned forward, hands over their mouths, already pitying her or preparing to laugh. The host, still a little amused but trying to be professional, walked over and asked loudly, "Little one, are you ready? Remember. Lift it high above your head and hold it for 3 breaths." Fengyu nodded calmly, her expression serious but bright. "Yes, I am ready." She walked straight toward the iron weight, which was almost as wide as her torso. Without pausing to brace herself, without rubbing her hands or taking a deep breath like the others had done, she bent slightly, wrapped one hand around the thick handle, and, with effortless ease, hoisted it upward. She raised it straight above her head, arm perfectly straight, holding it there as steady as a mountain. She didn't shake, she didn't strain, and there wasn't even a single change in her breathing. She just stood there, looking relaxed, as if she were holding nothing heavier than a small basket of flowers. The whole square fell dead silent. Everyone was holding their breath, stunned into stillness. The host himself stood frozen, mouth hanging open, counting completely forgotten. He just stared at the sight before him, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. Even the iron weight itself, which had looked so heavy and imposing moments ago, now seemed small and light in her hand. Down below in the front row, Jingyuan stood gripping his sleeves tightly, his eyes wide and unblinking. He had been half terrified, half expectant, but seeing it happen right in front of him still made his soul almost leave his body. Jingyuan finally snapped out of his daze and shouted toward the stage, waving his hand frantically. "Count. You have to count the breaths." The host jumped, startled, and finally recovered his wits. Right. I forgot. You have held it far longer than 3 breaths already. Passed. You have passed." Fengyu nodded casually, lowered the heavy iron block to the ground with a soft thud, dusted her palms together as if brushing off dust, and walked past the stunned host with a polite smile, joining the group of people who had already qualified. The host stood there shaking his head, turning to the crowd and announcing in a dazed voice, We definitely did not expect that." Moving on. As if nothing out of the ordinary had happened, the competition continued. Many had passed the first round, and soon the weights were swapped out for the second round, 100 catties, twice as heavy as before. Strong men grunted, veins bulging on their necks and foreheads, bodies trembling with effort as they fought to lift and hold the weight. When Feng Yu's turn came again, she stepped out into the center, completely unbothered. She walked up to the weight, grabbed it firmly with one arm again, and lifted it high above her head just like before. She stood there calmly, blinking slowly, while others around her were gasping for air just from watching. This time, whispers erupted loudly through the crowd. "Wait a minute, is that thing actually heavy?" Someone shouted out, confused. "She's lifting it like it's made of paper." But those big men were struggling so hard, I saw it too. But look. Those other fellows also lifted it, and they nearly collapsed. There's no way they could have swapped the weights secretly while we were all watching. It's definitely the same iron block. It makes no sense. How can a child that size do what those giants can barely manage? There must be a trick. Voices grew louder and more doubtful until finally, someone yelled, "Host, you try lifting it. Let us see if you can carry it. Prove it is really heavy iron." The host hesitated, sweat forming on his forehead. He knew exactly how heavy these weights were. He had helped set them up himself, but the crowd was demanding. Reluctantly, he walked over, gripped the handle with both hands, braced his legs, and pulled with all his might. His face turned beet red instantly, veins popping out all over his arms and neck, his whole body shaking violently, and he only managed to lift it around his waist before he had to drop it back down with a heavy clang, gasping for air. "See? It is real. It is heavy as lead," he wheezed, wiping sweat from his brow. That was all the proof they needed. The crowd erupted into wild cheers, shouting her name over and over. The small, skinny girl was now the center of everyone's attention, the most popular contestant by far. More than half the participants passed the second round as well, though many were already panting heavily and clutching their arms in pain. Then came the third round, the 150 caddy stone block that had to be carried from one end of the stage to the other and back. This was where the real difficulty began. Several strong-looking men managed to lift it up with both hands, their muscles screaming, but after taking just 2 or 3 wobbly steps, their legs gave way, and they dropped it with loud groans. Even the biggest, most muscular man in the competition, broad as a wall, arms thick as tree trunks, only just managed to stagger all the way across and back, chest heaving violently, sweat pouring down his face, legs trembling so hard he almost fell once he finished. Then it was Feng Yu's turn. She walked out calmly. The stone block was huge, wider, and taller than she was, so she naturally used both hands to wrap around it, pulling it close to her chest. She crouched slightly, engaged her strength, and up it came. She stood upright easily, holding the massive block as securely as if it were a bundle of clothes. Then, without slowing down, she began walking forward, quickly. Her steps were steady, fast, and light, no swaying, no effort visible at all. She marched straight to the end, turned around smoothly, and walked straight back to the starting point, arriving before some of the other contestants had even managed to stand up straight. She set it down gently, dusted off her hands again, and walked back to the group without even a deep breath taken. Silence reigned once more. People stared with mouths open, eyes wide, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. It was amusing, impossible, and utterly fascinating all at once. When the third round was finished, the host counted carefully. Surprisingly, 10 people had managed to complete the task, including Feng Yu and the giant man. There were supposed to be only 2 left for the final, but the strength of the participants, especially that of the girl named Feng, had far exceeded expectations. The organizers gathered together at the side, whispering urgently and pointing at the weights and the scoreboard. After a short discussion, the host stepped forward again and raised his hands. "Attention everyone. We have 10 powerful contestants remaining, far more than anticipated," he announced loudly. "Therefore, we are changing the schedule slightly. We will take a short break of a quarter hour for everyone to rest and refresh. Then, we will begin the 4th round. The weight will be increased to 250 caddies. Whoever can carry this new weight will proceed, and we will narrow it down to exactly 2 finalists for the grand prize match." Cheers roared again. The competition had become even more exciting and unpredictable. Everyone looked toward Feng Yu, wondering with bated breath, would this weight finally be too heavy? Or would she just keep going as before? Feng Yu stood calmly among the competitors, sipping a little water from a cup someone handed her, her eyes sparkling. 250 caddies? She smiled to herself. Almost as heavy as that wild boar, almost. She glanced over at Jingyuan, who was leaning against a pillar looking like he might faint from shock and stress at any moment. Don't worry, brother Jingyuan, she thought happily. The best part is still coming. The short break passed quickly, and the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and deep red. All the participants returned to their positions, breathing steadier and looking somewhat refreshed, having stretched their muscles and drunk water to summon every ounce of strength left in them. Only Feng Yu stood apart from the rest, completely relaxed. She was happily munching on a sweet bean cake she had specifically asked Jingyuan to buy for her. By this point, after witnessing what she had done in the earlier rounds, Jingyuan's earlier panic and disbelief had vanished completely. He had fully accepted the truth of his father's stories. She really had thrown a giant boar and defeated a whole gang of bandits. He was now calm, though still protective. He walked over and adjusted her collar gently. Eat slowly, he said softly, shaking his head with a helpless but fond smile. And remember, even if you are strong beyond belief, don't push yourself to the point of strain, all right? Your body is still young. Feng Yu swallowed her bite, smiled sweetly, and nodded obediently. I know, brother Jingyuan. I promise I'll be careful. Just then, the host stepped back onto the platform, followed by 4 large, burly men struggling to push a heavy wooden cart. On it rested a massive, rough-hewn boulder, dark gray, uneven, and looking incredibly solid. Even with 4 men pushing, the cart moved slowly and creaked loudly under the weight. Behold, the host shouted, his voice echoing across the square. This is the load for the 4th round. 250 caddies. You must lift this boulder, carry it from one end of the stage to the other, and return to the starting point to complete the task. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. The stone was bigger and wider than the block of stone from the 3rd round, and looked heavy enough to crush a table. Even the strongest participants broke into a cold sweat just looking at it, their expressions turning grave. Yet none stepped back. Pride was at stake. They were determined to prove that they were stronger than the strange, small girl who had stunned everyone earlier. The test began. The first burly man stepped forward. He braced his legs wide, wrapped both arms around the stone, took a huge breath, and pulled with everything he had. His face turned red instantly, veins bulging all over his neck and arms. He managed to lift it barely an inch off the ground, but his legs shook violently, and with a loud groan, he had to let it go immediately, unable to take even a single step. The next few men followed. Some grunted and strained until their eyes watered, others managed to heave it up chest-high before their strength gave out. None could take more than a wobbly step or 2 before dropping it with a heavy thud. Then came the biggest, most muscular contestant, the man who had struggled so hard but succeeded in the last round. He approached the stone with a fierce, determined glare, as if challenging fate itself. He locked his arms around it, roared, and heaved it upward. This time, it came up. He held it pressed tight against his chest, his whole body trembling like a leaf, sweat pouring down his face like rain. He took one staggering step, then another. His knees buckling. Just as he seemed about to collapse, he let it go, the stone hitting the wooden boards with such a loud crash that the whole stage shook. He stood there panting heavily, chest heaving, having given his absolute all, but he hadn't even made it halfway across. One by one, the remaining contestants tried, and one by one, they failed. The crowd began to sigh, murmuring that perhaps this weight was simply beyond human strength. It seemed no one would be able to finish the task. Until foam. She stepped forward calmly, brushing a few crumbs from her fingers. She walked right up to the massive boulder that had defeated every giant before her. She didn't widen her stance. didn't take a deep breath, and didn't grit her teeth. She simply wrapped her small arms carefully around the rough stone, embraced it close to her chest, and lifted. Up it came, smooth and steady, without a single sound of effort from her. There was no agony on her face, no trembling in her limbs. She held the 250 caddy rock as naturally as if she were carrying a basket of laundry. Then she began to walk. Casually. Slowly. Elegantly. She strolled across the stage, reached the far end, turned around gracefully, and walked back, her steps light and even. The entire square froze. Complete silence reigned. Mothers standing near the front clutched their own children tightly, gasping in fear, their hearts in their throats. Terrified that the heavy rock might slip and crush her tiny frame at any moment. Others rubbed their eyes vigorously, thinking they must be seeing things, that the sun was playing tricks on their vision. The strong men who had just failed stood rooted to the spot, staring at her with mouths wide open, their own definitions of strength completely shattered. Fengyu reached the starting point, carefully lowered the boulder to the ground as if it were made of glass, dusted off her hands and the front of her clothes, and smoothed her hair back into place. The host stood staring for a few seconds longer, then his legs gave way beneath him, and he dropped heavily to his knees on the stage floor. He crawled forward a little, looking up at her with a mix of awe and pure worry. "Little miss, child, are you hurt? Did it strain you anywhere? Please tell me you are unharmed." Fengyu blinked, then broke into a bright, radiant smile. She twirled around once on the spot, her clothes fluttering prettily, showing perfect ease and agility. "I am perfectly fine. Not even a little bit tired, really." She was still smiling when the host scrambled back up, raised his hands high, and shouted at the top of his lungs, "It is decided. Only Feng has succeeded. She is the winner." That was the signal everyone was waiting for. The silence exploded into thunderous cheers. People screamed, clapped, whistled, and shouted her name over and over until their voices grew hoarse. The strongest. Down below, Jingyuan finally let out the breath he had been holding for what felt like an eternity, his shoulders slumping in pure relief. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, laughing softly to himself. "I really should have known better," he thought. Up on stage, the other contestants gathered around her. Instead of jealousy, their faces were filled with utter respect and admiration. They clapped loudly, and one by one, the big, burly men bowed deeply to the small girl. "Truly magnificent," said the giant man who had tried his hardest. "We thought we were strong, but compared to you, we are like children. You are worthy of being called our master." "Master Feng," echoed the others, bowing again. Then the host approached, carrying a wooden tray covered with a red cloth. He presented it to her with both hands, bowing low. "Here is your reward, as promised," he announced proudly. 30 silver taels, far more than the original 5 taels. "And this precious jade token of the Shin family." He handed her the smooth, cool green jade carved with intricate patterns. The young master of the Shin family himself sent word just now. He said that seeing such a display of true strength and grace, the prize deserved to be raised. He wishes to convey that you have more than earned this, and he looks forward to welcoming you personally at the Shin restaurant whenever you choose to come. Any dish, any time, everything is yours to enjoy. Fengyu took the heavy pouch of silver and the jade token, her eyes sparkling with delight. She bowed politely to the host and waved happily to the cheering crowd. Not only had she won the money she needed for her plans, but she had also secured unlimited access to the finest food in the city. As she walked down the steps toward Jingyuan, clutching her rewards, she knew one thing for certain: her life in this new world was turning out to be far more wonderful, exciting, and delicious than she had ever dared to dream. As Fengyu and Jingyuan hurried away from the square, the crowd they left behind was still buzzing loudly, their voices carrying clearly through the air. Even as they walked slowly toward their homes, people were gesturing wildly, reenacting how she had lifted the massive stone, how casually she had walked back and forth, and how impossible the whole scene had seemed. "Did you see how small she is?" one man exclaimed, shaking his head. no bigger than my little sister. Yet she carried that rock like it was a bundle of straw. I've never seen anything like it in my life, another replied, eyes still wide with awe. She isn't human. She must be a little deity in disguise. Only gods have strength like that. Jingyuan guided Feng Yu toward the waiting carriage, helping her step up before climbing in himself. The ride back to the Bai estate was quiet and swift. Jingyuan sat leaning back against the seat, staring out the window, his mind already racing. How am I going to tell Mother and Father everything? He wondered, rubbing his temples. Father already said she was extraordinary, but this is beyond anything anyone could have imagined. Mother will definitely be shocked speechless. And to think she got 30 silver taels and that famous jade token. Before long, the carriage rolled through the grand gates of the Bai residence and came to a smooth stop. Jingyuan went out first, helping Feng Yu. She stepped out with a bright, beaming smile, her cheeks flushed pink from excitement, the heavy pouch of silver tucked safely in her sash, and the jade token hidden carefully in her sleeve. She walked happily beside Jingyuan toward the main hall, her steps light and bouncy. Just as they entered the inner courtyard, Bai Wei, the second son, came walking over. Seeing them return, and noticing how incredibly joyful Feng Yu looked, he smiled curiously and called out, "Brother." "Feng Yu. You went to the market, didn't you? You look like you had a wonderful time." Jingyuan nodded, walked over, and patted his younger brother firmly on the shoulder. He leaned closer and lowered his voice, his tone thick with amazement. "We did, and something absolutely amazing happened while we were there. You wouldn't believe it even if I told you." Just then, Feng Yu piped up cheerfully, "I'm going to my room now to put my things away. I'll see you both later." "Go on then," Jingyuan said gently. "Rest well and freshen up. We'll be having our evening meal together soon." "Okay." Feng Yu nodded enthusiastically, then turned and skipped all the way down the corridor, her little blue figure disappearing around the corner with a happy spring in every step. Bai Wei watched her go, then immediately turned back to his older brother, his eyes wide and full of questions. "All right, now tell me. What happened? What was so amazing?" Jingyuan let out a long breath, shook his head, and began recounting every single detail from the strength competition. He described the huge muscular men, the heavy weights that made grown men groan and struggle, and then Feng Yu. He told how she had stepped up so small and fragile-looking, how she lifted each weight effortlessly with one hand, how the crowd had grown suspicious and tested the weights, and finally that massive 250 caddy boulder that crushed the confidence of every other contestant, yet she had carried it back and forth like it was nothing more than soft feathers. And then, Jingyuan finished, still sounding stunned. The young master of the Shin family was watching and was so impressed he raised the reward. She got 30 silver taels, and the famous Shin family jade token. The one that lets you eat anything, anytime at their restaurant, where even nobles hesitate because it's so expensive. Bai Wei stood frozen in place, his mouth hanging open, completely unable to process what he was hearing. 30 taels. And that token? "Brother, are you sure you aren't making this up? She really did all that." Before Jingyuan could answer, the sound of footsteps approached from the entrance. Bai Huayuan and Madame Zhang had just returned from their errands. Seeing their two sons standing there with such strange expressions, one looking amazed and the other utterly stunned, they walked over curiously. "What are you two talking about?" Madame Zhang asked, smoothing her robes. "We could hear your voices from outside." "You look as if you've seen a miracle." Jingyuan and Bai Wei turned toward their parents at the same time. "Father. Mother." Jingyuan began, gesturing toward the direction Feng Yu had gone. "You won't believe what happened at the market just now. It turns out, everything Father told us about her strength was only the beginning." Then, together, they both began to speak, overlapping each other as they excitedly retold the incredible story. How Feng Yu had joined the competition, how she had defeated giants, lifted stones heavier than oxen, and walked away with the grand prize that no one else could even touch. As they listened, Bai Huayuan's face lit up with proud delight, while Madame Zhang's eyes grew larger and larger, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. By the time they finished, the truth was undeniable. The small, polite girl staying in their guest room was not just clever or brave. She was truly the strongest person any of them had ever known. And now she held wealth, fame, and a special connection to the most powerful family in the city in just half a day. Inside her room, Fengyu knelt by the bed and pulled out her cross bag from its hiding place underneath. She took out the 9 silver taels and string of copper coins she had, adding them to the 30 taels she had just won. Now she had 39 silver taels, plenty of copper coins, and the precious jade token safely tucked away. In her old modern life, this sum would have kept an average person living well for 6 months to a year, or been just her daily pocket money. But here, in this world, it was a small fortune enough for an ordinary family to live comfortably for years. She smiled, satisfied, then heard a soft knock on the door. "Miss Shin, dinner is served. Everyone is waiting for you," a servant called out. She quickly pushed her bag back under the bed, smoothed her clothes, and hurried out with a bright, happy expression. At the dining table, the whole family was seated calmly. Outwardly, they looked calm and polite, but their eyes betrayed them. They were all burning with curiosity, desperate to hear her side of the story. Even young Bai Ling, who once thought Fengyu was nothing but a fragile child and had doubted her father's tales, now sat wide-eyed and attentive, fully convinced after hearing her older brother's shocking account. Fengyu greeted them all with a graceful bow before taking her seat. For a moment there was only the sound of chopsticks and bowls, until Madame Zhang could no longer hold back. She set her utensils down and asked gently, "Fengyu, is it true what we heard? You really joined that strength competition and defeated all those big, burly men?" Fengyu swallowed her food, smiled innocently, and nodded. "Yes, Auntie. It was very simple. I just had to carry things and walk a little bit, and then I won." She couldn't help but feel a little proud inside. Back in her first life, she was pampered and weak, never able to show off like this, but now, she was unstoppable. Bai Ling gasped, leaning forward eagerly. "What is your secret? Do you have a master who taught you? Or are you perhaps an immortal in disguise?" Fengyu chuckled softly and shook her head. "No master, not immortal. Maybe. I was just born this way." They all exchanged amazed glances, but accepted her answer for now. The rest of the meal passed with warm conversation, everyone treating her with even more respect and affection than before. When dinner ended, they chatted a little longer about light matters before wishing each other good rest. Fengyu returned to her room, locked the door, and sank onto the soft bed with a happy sigh. Her plan was moving forward perfectly: safety, wealth, connections, and exciting new beginnings. She closed her eyes, already looking forward to what tomorrow would bring. Night deepened and Fengyu slept soundly, not waking until nearly noon the next day. No one disturbed her. Everyone knew she had earned every moment of rest. For her, and for the body she now inhabited, it was the longest, most peaceful, and most satisfying sleep she had ever known. She woke feeling refreshed, safe, and ready for whatever came next. Far away, in Qingyun City, the morning brought anything but peace. Early that day, Magistrate Wen Chongqing received a letter neatly folded and tied with a soft pink ribbon. He paused, curious at the delicate wrapping, but opened it and began to read. Halfway through, his expression turned grave. By the end, his hands were resting heavily on the desk. The letter detailed corruption, embezzlement, abuse, and neglect inside the city's orphanage of compassion, and at the bottom, the writer had signed simply, Shin. He frowned deeply. The Shin family was one of the most powerful, influential clans in the region, with connections stretching far and wide. He never imagined a member of that household would write to him about such a place, or that they knew so much about what went on there. If the Shin name is behind this, he thought, this is not a trivial matter. I must act swiftly and thoroughly. He immediately summoned his most trusted officers. Investigate everything about this orphanage. Dig up every secret, every transaction, every rumor. Leave nothing out. And be quick about it. His men moved like the wind. In just 2 hours, They returned with a mountain of information. They had spoken to townsfolk, merchants, and passers-by and uncovered clear evidence. Director Liu was a regular at gambling houses, where she squandered silver by the handful and lost heavily time and again. They also learned she had been badly injured recently, along with another woman known as Auntie Ma. Both were bedridden and in pain, yet still ruled the orphanage with an iron fist. Hearing this, Magistrate Wen's face darkened with rage. He gathered the evidence, stood up, and announced, "I will handle this myself. Prepare the guards, we are going there now." When they arrived at the orphanage gates, a trembling wet nurse came out to meet them. She had never expected to see official guards marching straight to their door, and her knees nearly gave way in fear. Magistrate Wen stepped forward, his expression stern and unyielding. "I have come to inspect this place and find out exactly what has been happening here. Take me to Director Liu at once." The woman bowed low, not daring to meet his eyes. She is resting in her chamber, Your Honor. Please follow me." 2 guards remained at the gate while the magistrate and his men followed her inside. As they walked, Magistrate Wen's heart sank. The buildings were run down, the air thick with a stale, unpleasant smell. Orphans peered out from corners. Clad in tattered, thin clothing, their faces gaunt, eyes hollow and empty, bones visible beneath their skin. It was clear they had not eaten properly or lived well in a very long time. As they approached Director Liu's room, loud, angry shouting could be heard from within. "Useless fools! Can't even find one little girl. Search again. Turn every stone. That ungrateful Wei Lan. I'll make her regret ever running away when I get my hands on her." Magistrate Wen signaled to his men, then pushed the door open without waiting. "Who dares enter my room without knocking?" Director Liu roared from her bed, head still swollen and wrapped in bandages. But when she saw who stood in the doorway, her mouth snapped shut. Her face paled instantly. She scrambled to sit up, wincing in pain, and burst into loud, fake sobs. "Your Honor." Magistrate Wen. "Oh, thank heavens you've come. I am in such pain. I've been wronged. Everything is so hard here." He stood calmly, letting her pour out her feigned grievances, his face cold and unmoved. When she finally paused for breath, he cut straight to the point. "Is there an orphan here named Wei Lan?" Director Liu's eyes widened. "Wei Lan? Oh, that wicked child. She escaped a few days ago. She attacked us, stole all the orphanage's funds, and ran away. We have been searching everywhere for her. She is a thief and a brute." Magistrate Wen held back his rising fury, listening to her rant. Then she spat out bitterly, "That little monster. I hope she's dead somewhere. This is all her fault. Everything falling apart is because of her and her bad luck." That was enough. He spoke sharply, his voice like ice. "You hope she is dead? I have news for you. Wei Lan is dead. She died a while ago, and her death was caused by your cruelty and your mismanagement of this place." Director Liu went pale, her mouth falling open in shock. Dead? She's dead? No, that can't be." "Enough," Magistrate Wen commanded. "We have heard all we need to know. Arrest her." Director Liu screamed, clutching her head and back, wailing, "No. Please. I am injured. I am in so much pain. Have mercy. I did nothing wrong." But the guards stepped forward, ignoring her cries, and dragged her from the bed. Next, he called all the wet nurses and the 2 older guards who had grown up inside these walls. One by one, they spoke up, at first fearfully, then with growing urgency. They told how even the workers were kept half-starved, punished for small mistakes, forced to work from dawn till dark. They revealed that Director Liu and Auntie Ma were the real masters here, taking donations meant for the children, spending it on themselves, beating and starving the orphans until they were nothing but skin and bones. Auntie Ma is also to be arrested, Magistrate Wen ordered. More cries and wails echoed through the building as Auntie Ma, limping and screaming, was dragged out of her room as well. The children huddled together, trembling, terrified by the noise and the sight of the women who had tormented them being taken away. Magistrate Wen looked around the yard, at the scared, thin faces of the children, and at the crumbling, filthy buildings. He turned to one of his officers and spoke firmly. Postmen here to guard the premises. No one enters without permission. Bring in cleaners and builders immediately. These children need proper shelter. He turned to everyone still standing in the courtyard and raised his voice so all could hear. Follow me out. This orphanage is being taken over by the authorities. It is in a shameful state, and it needs a complete and thorough cleaning from top to bottom, inside and out. Everything will change now. As they stepped out into the sunlight, leaving the chaotic place behind, Magistrate Wen knew one thing for certain. Whoever Shin was, they had done him and this city a great service. Magistrate Wen had everyone from the orphanage transferred immediately to a clean, spacious temporary lodge under official care. There, they were given warm water, soap, and fresh clothes, while physicians examined every single person from the youngest child to the wet nurses and the 2 guards. What they found made even the experienced physicians' faces turn grim. Beneath their tattered rags, almost every child's body was covered in old scars, fresh cuts, dark bruises, and welts from beatings that had gone on for years. Their limbs were terrifyingly thin, bones protruding sharply under dry, pale skin. Many had sores and skin infections caused by dirt, poor hygiene, and wounds left untreated for too long. Some were so weak from hunger and neglect that they could barely stand, their eyes hollow and lifeless, as if they had forgotten what kindness felt like. Even the wet nurses and the 2 guards bore marks of punishment, whip marks, burns, and scars from being beaten whenever they tried to help the children or spoke out of turn. During the thorough questioning that followed, Magistrate Wen asked the question that weighed most heavily on his mind. All this suffering went on for so long. The signs were clear, the conditions terrible. Why did no one ever report this to the yamen or any official before now? After a long silence, one of the older wet nurses spoke up, her voice trembling. Your Honor, one of us did try. Years ago, there was a woman named Andy Sue. She could no longer bear to watch the children suffer, so she gathered her courage and went to report everything to an official in your office. She paused, tears streaming down her face. But that official, he was secretly colluding with Director Liu. They were partners in evil. Instead of helping, he told Director Liu exactly what she had said. Auntie Sue was dragged back, beaten until she could not walk, locked in a dark room without food or water, and after that, she was never seen again. We were told she had left to work elsewhere, but we all knew she was gone because she tried to speak up. After that, none of us dared say a word. We were too afraid we would suffer the same fate. She took a shaky breath and revealed something even worse. And it wasn't just abuse or theft. Director Liu and that official worked together to sell many of the older orphans. They said they were sending them to good families or proper jobs, but in truth, those children were trafficked far away to work in dangerous mines in other cities. They never came back. We could do nothing but watch and keep quiet, or we would be next. Hearing this, Magistrate Wen sank back in his chair, his heart heavy with shame and anger. He let out a long, deep sigh, his hands gripping the armrests tightly. This is my fault, he said quietly, his voice thick with self-reproach. I am the magistrate. I am responsible for every person in this city. I should have inspected these places myself. I should have looked deeper instead of trusting reports written by corrupt men. I let these evils happen right under my nose, and innocent people suffered for years because of my negligence. He stood up abruptly, his expression hard and determined. But no longer. Now that I know the truth, I will not let it continue. I have the chance to change things, and I will make sure justice is served completely. He turned to his men and gave his orders clearly and firmly. Dig deeper. Investigate every official, every contact, every transaction linked to Director Liu and her associates. Find out exactly who is involved, how far this reaches, and where those trafficked children were sent. We will bring them back and rescue every single one we can. He paused, his eyes sweeping over his officers. Furthermore, we will clean this city thoroughly, once and for all. Anyone involved in illegal acts, corruption, abuse, or trafficking will be arrested, tried, and punished to the full extent of the law. No more looking the other way. No more leniency. The rules exist to protect the people, and from today onward, I will enforce them strictly and without fear. He thought again of the letter. It had been the spark that lit everything up, the eye-opener that showed him how much he had missed and how much more he needed to do. Without that message, these crimes might have gone on forever. All these momentous changes unfolding in Qingyun City were completely unknown to Fengyu. She sat happily at the dining table, enjoying every bite of her food, chatting casually with the Bai family, her mind full of plans and ideas, with not a single worry clouding her mood. Meanwhile, word of what had happened at the strength competition had spread like wildfire throughout every street, alley, and shop in Lianxi City. Everyone who had witnessed it or heard about it from others simply could not stop talking about it. People gathered in groups everywhere, at tea houses, market stalls, and even at street corners, all speculating endlessly about the mysterious little girl named Feng. There is no ordinary explanation for it, one man said seriously. She must be the reincarnation of a great warrior deity, or perhaps she comes from a legendary clan of superhumans. No human could possibly have that kind of strength naturally. Some were filled with excitement and curiosity, eager to catch even a glimpse of her or to meet her in person. I heard she is gentle and polite too. Not arrogant or rough at all. I really hope I get to see her once, just to know what such an extraordinary person is really like. Among them were strong men and martial arts practitioners, their eyes burning with challenge and anticipation. I have trained my body for years, thinking I was strong, but compared to her, I am nothing. I would love to test my strength against hers, just once, to see how far I really am from true power. Others, young men and boys with dreams of becoming powerful warriors, were even more enthusiastic. If she is that strong, she must know incredible techniques. I want to find her and beg her to take me as her disciple. Just learning a fraction of her skills would be enough to make me famous everywhere. But not everyone felt only admiration or excitement. Many wealthy families, influential merchants, and even local officials had heard the stories and seen the proof with their own ears. Their attitude was one of great caution and respect. "That little girl is no one to be trifled with," said a nobleman to his sons, his voice serious. "To offend her would be like asking for trouble. Treat anyone connected to her with the utmost courtesy. We must never give her a reason to be displeased." And so, the legend of Feng grew bigger. She had become the most talked about person in Lianxi City, a small, delicate figure who was feared, admired, sought after, and respected by all, while she herself remained completely unaware of them, as her focus is completely on eating delicious food.